Sophie Caldwell thought one last dinner would make him leave her alone. She was wrong. The man across the table wore a polished smile while his words cut like glass, threats disguised as concern, promises disguised as affection. She had tried running before. This time, he made it clear. There would be nowhere left to run. But neither of them knew the stranger at the next table was listening. And when that stranger stood up and walked over, everything Sophie thought she knew about fear, power, and what happens when you finally say, enough, was about to shatter. If you want to see how far this story goes, hit that like button and drop a comment with the city you're watching from. Now let's begin. The restaurant was too elegant for what Sophie felt inside. All soft lighting and white tablecloths, quiet conversations drifting between tables like background music. She smoothed her hands over her navy dress, the one she'd bought 3 years ago, back when wearing something pretty didn't feel dangerous. Back when she didn't check over her shoulder every 5 seconds. Grant was late. Of course he was late. Making her wait was part of the game. Sophie's phone buzzed. Her stomach tightened before she even looked at the screen. Running 10 minutes behind. Don't leave. She stared at those last 2 words. Don't leave. Not a request. Never a request with Grant. The waiter appeared beside her, a young guy with kind eyes and a professional smile. Can I get you something while you wait? Just water, please. Of course. He set down a glass, ice clinking softly. Let me know if you need anything else. Sophie wrapped both hands around the glass like it might anchor her to something solid. She shouldn't have come. She knew that. Had known it the second she'd agreed to this dinner 3 days ago when Grant called from a new number because she'd blocked the last 4 and said they needed to talk. Just talk. One last conversation to clear the air. She'd told herself it would be fine. Public place. Neutral ground. She could handle one meal. One final conversation. Then maybe, finally, he would leave her alone. The lies we tell ourselves, Sophie thought, are always the most convincing. She caught her reflection in the window beside her table. 28 years old, and she looked tired. Not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. The kind that lives in your bones. 2 years. That's how long it had been since she'd left him. 2 years of blocked numbers and ignored messages, of panic attacks in grocery store parking lots when she thought she saw his car, of sleeping with her phone on the nightstand because some part of her was always waiting for him to show up at her door. Her best friend Rachel had begged her not to come tonight. Sophie, this is insane. He's not going to suddenly become reasonable. He's going to manipulate you, guilt you, make you feel crazy for leaving in the first place. That's what he does. Rachel was right. Rachel was always right. But Sophie was so damn tired of being afraid, tired of looking over her shoulder, tired of organizing her entire life around avoiding one person. So here she was, in a restaurant she couldn't afford, wearing a dress that suddenly felt too tight, waiting for a man who had spent 3 years systematically destroying her sense of safety. The door opened. Sophie's heart kicked hard against her ribs. Grant walked in like he owned the place, probably felt like he did. Expensive suit, perfect hair, that smile that used to make her stomach flip and now just made her nauseous. He spotted her immediately, wove through the tables with easy confidence. Sophie forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the breathing exercises her therapist taught her. Sophie, he said her name like a prayer, slid into the seat across from her, reached for her hand. She pulled back before he could touch her. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance, maybe, but the smile never wavered. You look beautiful. Thanks. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. Small victory. I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I almost didn't. But you did? He leaned back, flagged down their waiter. We'll start with a bottle of the Camus, the 2018. Sophie's throat tightened. I'm not drinking. Grant's eyes cut to her, sharp for just a second before softening. Right? Of course. Just water for the lady, then. I'll still take the wine. The waiter nodded and disappeared. Grant turned back to Sophie, and there it was. That look. The one that said he was cataloging everything. Her dress, her hair, the way she wouldn't meet his eyes directly, taking notes for later. So, he said, voice smooth as silk. How have you been? Fine. Still teaching? Yes. 2nd grade, right? Must be rewarding. Sophie's jaw tightened. He knew exactly what grade she taught. He'd known where she worked, where she lived, probably knew her route to school and her favorite coffee shop. Acting like he didn't was just another game. Grant, you said you wanted to talk, so let's talk. Straight to business. You've changed. I hope so. That smile again, colder this time. I miss you, Sophie. I know things ended badly. I know I wasn't always the best partner, but we had something real. You can't just throw that away. I didn't throw anything away. I left because you let your friends poison your mind against me. His voice stayed level, reasonable. That was the worst part. He could say terrible things in the kindest tone. Rachel never liked me. She's been waiting for an excuse to turn you against me since day one. Sophie's hands curled into fists under the table. Rachel didn't turn me against you. You did that yourself. By loving you too much, by wanting to build a life with you, by controlling everything I did, who I saw, where I went, what I wore, I was protecting you. Still calm, still reasonable. The world's a dangerous place, Sophie. I was trying to keep you safe. From what? My friends? My family? From people who don't have your best interests at heart. The waiter returned with Grant's wine, poured a taste, waited for approval. Grant swirled it, sipped, nodded. Perfect. Sophie watched the deep red liquid fill his glass and felt her stomach turn. How many conversations had they had just like this? Grant talking in circles, rewriting history, making her question her own memory until she didn't know what was real anymore. Not this time. I'm not doing this, she said quietly. I came here because you said you wanted closure. If that's true, then let's have it. We're done, Grant. We have been for 2 years. I need you to accept that and move on. He took a slow sip of wine, set the glass down with deliberate care. When he looked at her again, something had shifted in his eyes. Something that made her skin crawl. Move on, he repeated, just like that. Yes. After everything I did for you, everything I gave you, you didn't give me anything except anxiety, and I gave you everything. His voice stayed quiet, but there was steel underneath now. A beautiful home, security, love. And you repaid me by running away in the middle of the night like I was some kind of monster. You broke my phone so I couldn't call for help when I what, Sophie? He leaned forward. When I got upset because I found out you were lying to me? When I reacted like any man would when the woman he loves betrays his trust? I wasn't lying. I told you I was having coffee with my sister. At 9 p.m. in a restaurant 40 minutes from our house? Because you'd made it impossible for her to come to our place. Because you hated everyone in my life who wasn't you. Grant's jaw tightened. He picked up his wine glass, then set it down again without drinking. You're twisting everything. I'm telling the truth. Your truth. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The story you've convinced yourself of because it's easier than admitting you destroyed something good out of fear and selfishness. Sophie felt the familiar spiral starting. The way he could take her words and reshape them, reflect them back until she couldn't remember what she'd actually said. Until she started questioning everything. No, not this time. I'm leaving. She reached for her purse. Grant's hand shot across the table, closed around her wrist. Not tight enough to hurt, just tight enough to stop her. Sit down, Sophie. Let go of me. We're not finished talking. Yes, we are. Let go. For a long moment, he didn't move, just held her wrist, his thumb resting against her pulse point where her heart was hammering. Then, slowly, he released her. You think you can just walk away from me again? His voice was barely above a whisper, but there was something ugly underneath it now. You think I'll just let you? You don't have a choice. I always have a choice. He picked up his wine glass, took a deliberate sip. You know what I think? I think you're scared. I think you know you made a mistake leaving, and now you're too proud to admit it. So you keep running. But here's the thing about running, Sophie. Eventually, you get tired, and when you stop, I'll be right there. Her mouth went dry. Are you threatening me? I'm promising you, because I love you, because what we had was real, and you know it. Deep down, you know it. All I know is that I spent 3 years being afraid in my own home, and I'm not going back to that. Not afraid of me, Grant said. Afraid of yourself. Afraid of what it means to be loved that completely. That's what you've never been able to handle. Sophie stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but she stood. We're done. Don't call me again. Don't text. Don't show up at my apartment. If you do, I'll get a restraining order. A restraining order? He laughed softly. For what? Having dinner with my ex-girlfriend? Trying to have a civil conversation? For harassment. I'd have to actually harass you for that to stick, and I haven't done anything wrong. He leaned back in his chair, perfectly relaxed. Have I followed you? Have I shown up uninvited? Or did you agree to meet me here tonight of your own free will? Sophie felt the trap closing around her. He was right. She had agreed to this. There was no proof of the blocked calls, the messages from different numbers, the times she'd seen his car parked near her school. Nothing that would hold up in court, just her word against his. Stay away from me. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Grant's smile widened. Or what, Sophie? What are you going to do? She turned to leave. You'll regret this. His voice followed her, quiet and certain. Walking away right now. You'll regret it. Sophie kept walking, made it 3 steps before his next words stopped her cold. That's a pretty dress. Shame if something happened to it. Shame if something happened to you. She turned around slowly. Grant was watching her, his expression pleasant, like they were discussing the weather. What did you just say? I said it's a pretty dress. You always did have good taste. He swirled his wine. When you let me help you shop, anyway. Left to your own devices, you make some questionable choices. The threat was clear, veiled but clear. Sophie's heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. A movement caught her eye. The man at the table directly beside them had turned slightly in his chair. She'd noticed him earlier, hard not to, really. Mid-30s, dark suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, the kind of presence that made people look twice. He'd been working on a laptop, barely touching his drink. Now he was looking directly at Grant. Excuse me, the man said, his voice quiet but carrying weight. I couldn't help overhearing. Grant's head swiveled. This is a private conversation. Is it? The stranger closed his laptop. Because it sounds a lot like you're threatening this woman, in a public restaurant, where anyone could hear. I don't know who you think you are. Someone who's heard every word you've said for the past 20 minutes. The man stood up. He was tall, Sophie realized. Maybe 6'2", with the kind of controlled stillness that suggested he knew exactly what he was capable of. And I'm thinking she asked you to leave her alone, multiple times. Grant's face flushed. This doesn't concern you. Threatening someone in front of me makes it concern me. I didn't threaten anyone. Did I threaten you, Sophie? All eyes turned to her. Sophie's throat felt like sandpaper. She knew how this worked. If she said yes, Grant would deny it, make her look hysterical. If she said no, he won. The stranger's eyes met hers. They were dark, unreadable, but there was something steady in them, something that felt like solid ground. You don't have to answer that, he said quietly. To her, not Grant. And you don't have to stay here. You can leave right now if you want to. She's not going anywhere with you, Grant snapped, standing up. Sophie, sit down. We're not finished. I think you are. The stranger moved slightly, not aggressive, but deliberate, putting himself between Grant and Sophie. Here's what's going to happen. The lady is going to decide if she wants to stay or go, and you're going to respect that decision. Who the hell do you think you are? Someone who knows exactly who you are, Grant Mercer. The stranger's voice stayed level, almost conversational. Hedge fund manager at Sterling Cross. Graduated from Princeton. Father's a federal judge. You've spent your whole life being told you're special, that rules don't apply to you, that you can have whatever you want if you're persistent enough. Grant had gone very still. How do you... I also know you've been calling Sophie from different numbers for the past 6 months, that you've driven past her apartment, that you showed up at her school 3 weeks ago and waited in the parking lot until she left. Sophie's blood turned to ice. She hadn't known about that last one. Grant's mask slipped. Just for a second, Sophie saw real anger flash across his face. You've been spying on me? No, I've been listening. There's a difference. The stranger pulled his phone from his pocket. I've also been recording this conversation. Every word, including the part where you threatened her. I didn't. That's illegal. You can't. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I can record any conversation I'm part of. And I became part of this one the moment you made it my business. He held up the phone. So here's the new plan. You're going to finish your wine, pay your bill, and leave. You're not going to contact Sophie again. Not by phone, not by email, not in person. If you do, this recording goes to the police. And I'm guessing a federal judge's son getting arrested for harassment wouldn't be great for the family reputation. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Grant laughed, short and bitter. You think you're protecting her? You don't know anything about our relationship. I know enough. Sophie. Grant ignored the stranger, focused on her. This is your last chance. Walk away with this lunatic and you'll regret it. I promise you'll regret it. The stranger took a step forward, not threatening exactly, but Grant took a step back anyway. That sounded like another threat, the stranger said quietly. Want to go for 3? See what happens? Grant's face was red now, his composure cracking. You have no idea who you're dealing with. Roman Devereaux. The stranger extended his hand in mock politeness. Nice to meet you. And you're right, I know exactly who I'm dealing with. A spoiled bully who's never been told no in his life, who thinks money and connections mean you can terrorize someone without consequences. He dropped his hand when Grant didn't shake it. The difference between us is that my money and connections are real. Yours are borrowed from Daddy. Grant's jaw clenched. For a second, Sophie thought he might actually take a swing, but something in Roman's eyes made him reconsider. This isn't over, Grant said. Yes, Roman replied. It is. Grant grabbed his suit jacket, threw down enough cash to cover his wine without counting it, and stormed toward the exit. He paused at the door, looked back at Sophie. You're making a mistake, he said. Then he was gone. Sophie's legs suddenly felt like water. She grabbed the edge of the table to steady herself, trying to process what had just happened. Are you okay? Roman's voice was gentler now. I don't know. That's fair. He gestured to his table. Would you like to sit down? You look like you could use a minute. Sophie should have said no, should have thanked him and left. But her knees were shaking and her heart was still racing, and the thought of walking out that door alone, of going home to her empty apartment while Grant was out there somewhere, angry and humiliated. Okay, she heard herself say up, just for a minute. Roman pulled out a chair at his table. Sophie sat, grateful to be off her feet. The waiter appeared like magic. Can we get some water? Roman asked. And maybe some bread? Right away, sir. Sophie stared at her hands. They were trembling. I don't understand what just happened. You stood up to someone who's been terrorizing you. That's what happened. No, I mean, how did you know all that about Grant, about me? Roman was quiet for a moment. I didn't. Not until tonight. I heard him making threats, looked him up while you were talking. It's amazing what you can find in 15 minutes when you know where to look. You recorded him. You really recorded the whole thing? He held up his phone. Every word. Why? Sophie looked at him directly for the first time. Why would you do that for a stranger? Roman's expression was hard to read. Because no one should have to sit there and take that. Because I heard you ask him to leave you alone and he ignored you. Because... He paused. Because I've seen what happens when people like Grant Mercer don't hear the word no backed up by consequences. The waiter brought water and bread. Sophie drank half the glass in one go, felt the cold spread through her chest. He's going to be so angry, she said quietly. Let him be angry. He can't touch you. You don't know that. I do, actually. Roman leaned back in his chair. Men like Grant are bullies. They rely on fear and intimidation because that's all they have. Take that away. Show them there's someone watching, someone with more power than they have, and they fold. Every time. He has money, connections. His father's a federal judge, I know. My attorney is a former U.S. attorney who now charges $800 an hour to remind people that judges aren't above the law. Neither are their sons. He pulled a business card from his wallet, slid it across the table. If Grant contacts you again, if he shows up anywhere near you, call me. Day or night. I'll handle it. Sophie picked up the card. Heavy stock, raised lettering. Roman Devereaux, Devereaux Holdings. What do you do? She asked. Investment management, development, some other things. He waved a hand dismissively. It's boring. The point is I have resources, and I'm offering them to you. Why? The question came out sharper than she intended. I don't understand why you would do this. We don't know each other. Roman was quiet for a long moment. My sister had a boyfriend like Grant once. By the time she finally left him, she was so broken down she didn't recognize herself anymore. She's okay now. But it took years. And I've always wondered what would have happened if someone had stepped in earlier, if someone had been there to tell her it wasn't her fault, that she deserved better. Sophie felt something crack in her chest. I'm sorry about your sister. Don't be. She's stronger now than she ever was, like you're going to be. You don't know me. I know enough. He nodded at the card still in her hand. Think of it as insurance. Probably won't need it, but if you do, it's there. Sophie tucked the card into her purse. Her head was spinning. 20 minutes ago, she'd been sitting across from Grant, feeling trapped and helpless. Now she was having bread with a stranger who'd materialized out of nowhere like something from a movie. I should go, she said. Where do you live? Lakeview. Why? How are you getting home? The train. Roman shook his head. Not tonight. Let me drive you. That's really not... Sophie. He said her name carefully, like he was aware it was the first time. Grant knows what you drive. He probably knows your route home. He just got humiliated in a very public way, and men like him don't handle that well. Please, let me make sure you get home safe. She should have said no, should have insisted she was fine, that she could take care of herself. But the truth was, she was terrified. The thought of waiting on a dark platform, of walking from the station to her apartment alone, of lying in bed wondering if every sound was Grant coming back. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Roman settled both bills, his and the one Grant had left cash for, and led her to the parking garage. His car was a black Mercedes, sleek and expensive looking. He opened the passenger door for her. The drive to Lakeview was quiet. Sophie gave him her address, then sat watching the city lights blur past. Her mind kept replaying the restaurant, Grant's face when Roman had said his full name, the recording, the threat about making him regret it. He meant it, she said suddenly, when he said I'd regret this. Roman glanced at her. He's going to try to scare you, maybe send some messages, make some calls. Don't engage. Block him. If he escalates, we go to the police with the recording. And you really think that will stop him? I think it will make him think twice. That's usually enough. They pulled up outside her building. Sophie recognized her own reluctance to get out of the car. Out here, she was exposed, visible. Roman seemed to sense it. What floor are you on? Third. Let me walk you up. You don't have to. I know. I want to. They took the elevator in silence. Sophie's apartment was at the end of the hall, a one-bedroom she'd moved into after leaving Grant. Small, but it was hers. She unlocked the door, suddenly aware of how modest it must look to someone who drove a Mercedes and wore custom suits. Thank you, she said, turning to face him in the hallway. For everything. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't. You would have handled it. Maybe differently, but you would have handled it. I don't know about that. I do. He pulled another card from his wallet. This one had a different number written on the back in neat handwriting. My personal cell. I meant what I said. Anytime, day or night. If you need help, call. Sophie took the card. I can't pay you back for this. For any of it. I'm not asking you to. Then what do you want? It was a blunt question, maybe unfair. But Sophie had learned the hard way that nobody did anything for free. There was always a price, always an angle. Roman's expression didn't change. I want you to be safe, that's all. People don't just... Nobody just helps like this, not without wanting something. Maybe you've been around the wrong people. Maybe. Sophie's hand tightened on the door. But forgive me if I'm a little skeptical about strange men who swoop in and rescue me. Something shifted in Roman's eyes. Not hurt, exactly. More like understanding. You're right to be skeptical. You don't know me. For all you know, I could be worse than Grant. Are you? No, but you have no reason to believe that. He stepped back, giving her space. So here's what we're going to do. You're going to go inside, lock your door, and try to get some sleep. Tomorrow, if you want, you can Google me. Look up Devereaux Holdings. See if anything I've told you is true. And then, if you still feel okay with it, you can keep that card. If not, throw it away. No hard feelings. Sophie studied his face, looking for the trap, the angle, the catch. But all she saw was a man who looked tired in the way she felt tired, like he'd seen things that didn't leave easily. Okay, she said finally. I can do that. Good. He turned to leave, then paused. Sophie, lock your door. All the locks. And if you hear anything that doesn't feel right, call the police first. Then call me. You think he'll come here tonight? No, I think he's too smart for that. But I also think you should be careful. He left without waiting for a response. Sophie watched him walk to the elevator, then closed her door and threw the deadbolt, the chain, the second lock she'd installed herself 3 months after moving in. Then she slid down the door and sat on her hallway floor, finally letting herself shake. The next morning, Sophie called in sick to work. She hadn't slept more than an hour, and every sound had jerked her awake, convinced it was Grant at the door. At 7 a.m., she made coffee and opened her laptop. The search for Devereaux Holdings brought up pages of results. Roman Devereaux, CEO and founder. Investment firm specializing in commercial real estate and private equity. Based in Chicago. Net worth estimated somewhere in the hundreds of millions. There were photos. Roman at charity events, groundbreakings, business conferences. Always in a suit, always with that same controlled expression. A few articles mentioned his sister, Catherine Devereaux, who ran a nonprofit for domestic violence survivors. Sophie sat back, coffee growing cold in her hands. He'd told the truth, all of it. Her phone buzzed, unknown number. Her stomach dropped. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Hello? Breathing on the other end. Then, you made your choice, Sophie. Grant. Don't call me again. Her voice shook. Or what? You'll have your new boyfriend threaten me again? You think I'm scared of Roman Devereaux? I think you should be, Grant laughed. You have no idea what you've started. No idea what I'm capable of. I have the recording, Grant. If you don't leave me alone, it goes to the police. Good luck with that. Let me know how far you get with a recording taken without my consent. Illinois is one party. I know what Illinois law says. I also know what my father will say, what my lawyers will say. You think you're the first woman who's tried this? You think you're special? His voice dropped, vicious. You're nothing, Sophie. You were nothing when I found you, and you're nothing now. The only thing you ever had worth anything was me. Sophie's hand was shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. Stay away from me. Or what? She hung up, blocked the number, then sat there staring at her phone, waiting for it to ring again. It didn't. But an hour later, there was a knock at her door. Sophie froze. Checked the peephole. It wasn't Grant. It was Roman Devereaux, holding a coffee in a bag from the bakery down the street. I know you probably think I'm stalking you, he said when she opened the door, chain still on. But I was in the neighborhood, and I thought you might not have slept much. Peace offering? He held up the coffee and bag. Sophie should have closed the door, should have told him to leave. Instead, she heard herself ask, How did you know I'd be home? I didn't. I was going to leave these with your building manager if you weren't here. She undid the chain, let him in, immediately regretted it. Her apartment was tiny, cluttered with the chaos of someone who hadn't been expecting visitors. Books everywhere, papers graded and ungraded, a basket of laundry she hadn't folded yet. Roman didn't seem to notice. He set the coffee and bag on her kitchen counter. Grant called you, didn't he? Sophie's head snapped up. How did you, because he called me too. 20 minutes ago, from a number he apparently thinks I can't trace. Told me to stay away from you or he'd make me regret it. Roman leaned against the counter, arms crossed. I'm guessing his call to you was less polite. He said I was nothing, that I'd started something I couldn't finish. Classic intimidation. He's trying to scare you into backing down. It's working. The admission came out before Sophie could stop it. Roman's expression softened. That's normal. But here's the thing. He called me because he's scared. He wouldn't waste his time threatening me if he didn't see me as a real problem. which means he's taking this seriously. Or it means he's going to escalate. Maybe, which is why I came here. Roman pulled out his phone, pulled up an address. I own a building in Lincoln Park. There's a vacant apartment on the 4th floor. 2 bedrooms, security system, doorman, 24/7. You can stay there until this blows over. Sophie stared at him. You can't be serious. Completely serious. I don't even know you. I know. But Grant knows where you live. He's already proven he'll call you, probably show up here eventually. This place, Roman gestured around her apartment, has no security, no doorman. He could walk in off the street. So your solution is for me to move into your building, live in an apartment you own? How is that any better? Because I'm not going to hurt you, Sophie, and Grant will. You don't know that. Yes, Roman said quietly. I do. I've seen this pattern before. The threats escalate, the contact increases, and one day he shows up here and doesn't just call you names. He makes good on what he's been promising. Sophie felt cold. You're trying to scare me. I'm trying to be honest with you. Grant Mercer is dangerous. Not because he's physically strong or particularly smart. He's dangerous because he believes he's entitled to you. And entitled men don't stop until someone makes them stop. And you think you can make him stop? I know I can, but not if you're living somewhere he can get to you whenever he wants. Sophie crossed her arms. I can't afford an apartment in Lincoln Park. You're not paying rent. I'm not accepting charity. It's not charity, it's insurance. You stay there until Grant gets the message and moves on. Could be a few weeks, could be a few months. Either way, you're safe, and I know you're safe. Then, when it's over, you go back to your life. Just like that. Just like that. Sophie wanted to say no. Every instinct told her this was wrong, that accepting help like this came with strings she couldn't see yet. But Grant's voice kept echoing in her head. You're nothing. You made your choice. And the worst part was some tiny piece of her still believed him. I need to think about it, she said finally. Fair enough. Roman straightened, heading for the door. But Sophie, don't think too long. I meant what I said about escalation. Grant's already called both of us this morning. That's not the behavior of someone who's backing down. He left. Sophie locked the door behind him, then sank onto her couch, head in her hands. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, a text came through. I see you've moved on quickly. That was fast, even for you. Grant. He'd seen Roman leaving her building, which meant he was watching. Right now. Sophie's hands started shaking again. She went to the window, careful to stay behind the curtain, scanned the street below for Grant's silver Audi. She didn't see it, but that didn't mean he wasn't there. Another text. He can't protect you forever. Eventually, we're going to finish our conversation. Sophie grabbed her phone and called the number on Roman's card before she could talk herself out of it. He answered on the first ring. Sophie? He's watching my apartment. He just texted me. He saw you leave. A pause. Pack a bag. I'm coming back. Roman. Pack a bag, Sophie. Whatever you need for a few days. I'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up. Sophie stood there, phone in hand, heart pounding. This was crazy. Moving into an apartment owned by a man she'd met 12 hours ago because her ex-boyfriend was sending threatening texts. It was insane. But so was staying here, knowing Grant was out there watching, waiting. She grabbed a duffel bag and started packing. Roman's driver pulled up to her building 9 minutes later. Sophie watched from her window as a black SUV double-parked, hazards flashing. Roman got out, scanned the street with the kind of awareness that came from practice, then headed inside. She met him at her door with the duffel bag already packed. He took it from her without comment, glanced around the apartment one more time. Anything else you need right now? My laptop, school stuff. Sophie grabbed her work bag from the couch. This feels insane. I know. I teach second graders. I have lesson plans to write, parent conferences next week. And you can do all of that from the new place. It's 15 minutes from your school, less during off-peak hours. Sophie locked her apartment door, testing the handle twice. Habit. What do I tell people? My principal? My friends? The truth. Your ex has been harassing you and you're staying somewhere safer for a while. Roman led her to the elevator. You haven't done anything wrong, Sophie. You don't have to hide this. The SUV's windows were tinted dark enough that Sophie couldn't see inside until Roman opened the door for her. The interior was leather and wood grain, the kind of vehicle that cost more than she made in 2 years. She climbed in, feeling out of place in her jeans and yesterday's sweater. The driver pulled away from the curb smoothly. Sophie watched her building disappear behind them, tried to ignore the tightness in her chest. "Does he know?" she asked. "Grant. Does he know where we're going?" "Not unless you tell him." Roman was typing something on his phone. "The building's owned through a holding company. 3 layers of corporate structure between my name and the property records. Even if he tries to find it, he'll hit walls." "You've done this before." It wasn't a question. Roman looked up from his phone. "Helped people?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because I can. Because most people can't." They drove through downtown, the morning sun cutting between buildings in sharp angles. Sophie's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She declined the call. "He's not going to stop," she said quietly. "Not immediately, but he will. Men like Grant thrive on power and control. Take those away. Make it clear there are consequences, and they move on to easier targets." "That's a depressing thought." "It's realistic." Roman pocketed his phone. "The alternative is pretending he'll suddenly see reason and leave you alone out of respect. And we both know that's not happening." The SUV pulled up to a building in Lincoln Park that looked like it belonged in a magazine. Glass and steel, modern architecture, a doorman in an actual uniform standing under the awning. Sophie's stomach sank. "Roman, I can't." "You can, and you are." He was already out of the vehicle, coming around to open her door. "Come on, let me show you the place before you decide you hate it." The lobby was all marble and recessed lighting. The doorman greeted Roman by name, nodded politely to Sophie. They took an elevator to the 4th floor, walked down a hallway that smelled faintly of expensive carpet and air fresheners. Roman unlocked apartment 4C and stepped back to let her enter first. The space was beautiful. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the park, hardwood floors, furniture that looked comfortable and expensive at the same time. 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen with granite countertops and appliances Sophie didn't know the names for. "It's too much," she said. "It's available and it's safe. That's all that matters." Sophie walked to the windows, looked out at the trees below. "People are going to think, they're going to assume things. About us. Let them assume." Easy for you to say. "Sophie," Roman leaned against the kitchen counter. "I know this is overwhelming. I know you don't have any reason to trust me, but I'm not asking for anything except the chance to help. No strings, no expectations. You stay here until you feel safe going back to your own place. That's it. Nobody does this. Nobody just hands a stranger an apartment in Lincoln Park. I'm not nobody. And you're not a stranger who needs help. You're someone in a bad situation who deserves better." Sophie turned from the window. "What if Grant finds out? What if he thinks we're—" "Then let him think it. Maybe it'll make him back off faster. Or it'll make him angrier. Anger without action is just noise." Roman straightened. "Look, I have a meeting downtown in an hour. You don't have to decide right now. Stay for a few hours. See how it feels. If you hate it, I'll drive you home myself." He left her the keys and his card, told the doorman she was staying in 4C and should be given full access. Then he was gone, and Sophie was alone in an apartment that probably cost more per month than she made in 3. She sat on the couch, felt herself sink into cushions that actually supported her back, and pulled out her phone. Rachel answered on the second ring. "Please tell me you survived dinner." "I survived, barely." "That bad?" "Worse." Sophie filled her in on everything: the restaurant, Grant's threats, Roman's intervention, the phone calls, the texts, and now the apartment. When she finished, there was a long silence. "Soph, I love you, but this sounds sketchy as hell." "I know. Some rich guy you've never met just happens to overhear your ex threatening you, records the whole thing, and offers you a free apartment? When you say it like that, it sounds like the setup for a horror movie or a really depressing Lifetime special." Sophie laughed despite herself. "Yeah. Have you Googled him?" "Yes, he's legitimate. Owns a big investment firm. His sister runs a domestic violence nonprofit. Everything he told me checks out. Okay, but that doesn't mean he's not a creep. Rich creeps exist. I know, but Grant is watching my apartment, Rachel. He texted me this morning. He saw Roman leaving. Another silence. Shit. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so what are you going to do? Sophie looked around the apartment. I think I'm going to stay. At least for tonight. See how it goes. Please be careful, and text me every few hours so I know you're okay. I will. And Sophie, if this guy tries anything at all, you call the police. You don't worry about being polite or grateful or whatever. You just call. I promise. After they hung up, Sophie unpacked her duffel bag in the main bedroom, put her toiletries in the bathroom, her clothes in the closet. It felt strange claiming space in someone else's home. But Roman had been clear. This was hers for as long as she needed it. Her phone rang again. She almost didn't answer, but the number was local and familiar. Hello? Ms. Caldwell, this is Principal Morrison. Sophie's stomach dropped. Her principal never called her cell. Hi, is everything okay? That's what I wanted to ask you. I had a visitor this morning. A man claiming to be your boyfriend. He wanted to know which classroom was yours. The room tilted. What did he look like? Tall, well-dressed, dark hair? He said he wanted to surprise you with flowers. Not Roman. Grant. What did you tell him? Nothing. Something felt off about it, so I told him I couldn't give out that information. He left, but Ms. Caldwell, I'm concerned. Should I be worried about your safety? Sophie's hands were shaking. I have an ex-boyfriend who's been harassing me. I didn't think he'd come to the school. Do you have a restraining order? Not yet. I'm working on it. I'm going to alert security in the front office. His description will be circulated to all staff. If he shows up again, we'll call the police immediately. And Sophie, maybe take a few personal days just until this is resolved. I have parent conferences. We can reschedule them. Your safety is more important. Sophie thanked her and hung up, then immediately called Roman. He answered in the middle of what sounded like a meeting. Sophie, what's wrong? Grant went to my school, tried to find my classroom. A pause. Then she heard him say something to whoever he was with, footsteps, a door closing. What happened? She told him. When she finished, Roman was quiet for a long moment. Okay, here's what we're going to do. You're not going back to that school until this is handled. I'll have someone pack up your classroom, bring you whatever you need to work from home. Roman, I can't just— Yes, you can. Your principal already suggested it. Grant showing up at your workplace is escalation. It means he's not thinking clearly, which makes him more dangerous. I have students, responsibilities. And you have a right to be safe. Those students will be fine with a substitute for a few days. You won't be fine if Grant corners you in a parking lot. Sophie pressed her free hand against her forehead. This was spiraling so fast. 2 days ago, her biggest problem was deciding what to teach for the school assembly. Now she was hiding in a stranger's apartment because her ex was stalking her workplace. I should go to the police, she said. Yes, you should. But first, I'm sending over a lawyer. I can't afford— You're not paying. She's on retainer with my firm. Her name is Jennifer Krause, and she specializes in restraining orders and harassment cases. She'll meet you at the apartment in 2 hours, help you file everything properly. This is too much. I can't let you Sophie, listen to me. Grant isn't going to stop because you ask nicely. He's not going to stop because you block his number or change your routine. He's going to stop because the legal system forces him to. And even then, it's a gamble. But the best chance you have is doing this right the first time. No gaps, no mistakes. Jennifer will make sure of that. Sophie wanted to argue, wanted to tell him she could handle this herself. But the truth was, she couldn't. Not alone. Not against someone who had money and connections, and a father who was a federal judge. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. I'll check in later. Lock the door. Don't answer it for anyone except Jennifer. I'll text you when she's on her way. He hung up. Sophie sat on the edge of the bed trying to process everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Running away won't change anything. We're meant to be together. You'll see that eventually. She blocked the number. 2 minutes later, another text from a different number. I forgive you for last night. I know you were scared, but hiding won't work. I'll always find you. Sophie's vision blurred. She blocked that number too, knowing it wouldn't matter. He'd just get another one. The doorbell rang 2 hours later. Sophie checked the peephole and saw a woman in her 40s, sharp suit, briefcase, looking like she had somewhere important to be. "Ms. Caldwell, I'm Jennifer Krause." Sophie let her in. Jennifer set her briefcase on the dining table, pulled out a legal pad and recorder. "Roman filled me in on the basics, but I need to hear everything from you. Start from the beginning. When did you and Grant Mercer start dating?" For the next 2 hours, Sophie talked. Jennifer took notes, asked clarifying questions, never once looked shocked or skeptical. When Sophie described the worst nights, the times Grant had grabbed her wrist hard enough to bruise, the time he'd taken her phone and refused to give it back until she apologized for imagined offenses, the constant tracking and questioning, Jennifer just nodded and wrote faster. "What about documentation?" Jennifer asked. "Do you have any texts, emails, photos of injuries?" "Some texts. I deleted most of them because seeing them made me feel sick. No photos. I didn't think to take any. That's normal. Most people don't." "What about witnesses? Anyone who saw the abuse?" "My friend Rachel, my sister, they both saw how he was." "Good. We'll get statements from them." Jennifer flipped to a new page. "Now, the recent harassment, these unknown numbers, the texts, showing up at your school. Do you still have those messages?" Sophie pulled out her phone, showed her everything. Jennifer photographed each one with her own phone. "This is plenty for a restraining order. Between the threats at the restaurant, the recording Roman made, and this pattern of contact after you've asked him to stop, we have a solid case." She closed her notepad. "I'll file the petition tomorrow morning. You'll need to appear before a judge, probably within a week. Grant will be served, which will make him angry. You need to be prepared for that." "More angry than he already is?" "Different angry. Right now he thinks he can convince you to come back or scare you into submission. Once he's served with legal papers, he'll realize this is real. Some men back down at that point, others escalate." "Which kind is Grant?" Jennifer's expression was carefully neutral. "Based on what you've told me, he's the type who escalates, which is why staying here away from your known addresses is smart. Has he tried to contact you today?" Sophie showed her the texts. Jennifer photographed those too. "Keep your phone on. Don't block any numbers. I know it's hard, but we need a record of every attempt he makes to contact you. It strengthens our case." After Jennifer left, Sophie sat in the apartment and watched the sun set over Lincoln Park. Her phone buzzed steadily, texts from unknown numbers, calls that went to voicemail. She didn't listen to them, just let them pile up, evidence for a case she never wanted to have to make. Around 8, there was a knock on the door. Sophie tensed, checked the peephole. Roman, holding takeout bags. She let him in. He set the bags on the kitchen counter, started unpacking containers of Thai food. "Wasn't sure what you liked, so I got a variety." "You didn't have to do this." "I was hungry. Figured you might be too." He pulled out plates, started serving. "How'd it go with Jennifer?" "Good. She's filing tomorrow." "Good." He handed her a plate of pad thai. "Eat. You look like you haven't had a real meal in 2 days." He wasn't wrong. Sophie took the plate, sat at the counter. The food was good, better than she expected. They ate in silence for a few minutes. "Can I ask you something?" Sophie said finally. "Sure." "Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's just because you can, or because of your sister. There has to be more to it." Roman set down his fork. "You want the truth? Please? I've spent the last 15 years building a business, making money, accumulating power. And somewhere along the way, I forgot what any of it was for. Then I heard Grant threatening you in that restaurant, and I remembered. Power isn't worth anything if you don't use it to protect people who can't protect themselves. So I'm what? Your redemption project? No. You're someone who deserves help, and I'm someone who can give it. It's that simple. Nothing's ever that simple. Maybe not. But I'm not complicated, Sophie. I see a problem, I fix it. That's what I do." Sophie pushed rice around her plate. "What if I can't be fixed?" "You're not broken. You're scared. There's a difference." Grant would disagree. He always said I was the problem. That if I just tried harder, listened better, stopped being so difficult. Grant is a manipulative piece of shit who gets off on making women feel small. Roman's voice was hard. Nothing he said about you was true. None of it. You don't know that. You don't know me. I know enough. I know you're a teacher who cares enough about her students to worry about them even when you're dealing with this. I know you left an abusive relationship, which takes more courage than most people have. And I know you're sitting here questioning whether you deserve help, which tells me Grant did a number on your self-worth. Sophie's throat tightened. He said I was nothing without him. He was wrong. Was he, though? Look at me. I'm 28, living in an apartment I can't really afford, teaching for $40,000 a year, and hiding from my ex-boyfriend because I'm too scared to face him alone. You're 28, supporting yourself, shaping young minds every day, and smart enough to accept help when you need it. Those things aren't mutually exclusive. Sophie looked at him, really looked. Roman Devereaux was objectively handsome, strong jaw, dark eyes that didn't miss much, the kind of presence that made people pay attention. But it was more than that. There was something steady about him, something that felt like solid ground after years of standing on quicksand. I don't know how to do this, she admitted. How to just accept help without feeling like I owe you something. Then don't accept it as help. Accept it as basic human decency. Someone in a bad situation, someone with resources offering them. No debt, no obligation. Just one person to another. People don't work like that. Some people do. You just haven't met enough of them yet. Her phone buzzed. Another text. She glanced at it, felt her stomach turn. I know you're with him. I know you think he can protect you, but he can't. Not forever. And when he gets bored and moves on, I'll still be here. I'll always be here. Roman must have seen her face change. What did he say? She showed him. Roman's jaw tightened. He's fishing, trying to get you to react, to engage. Don't give him the satisfaction. He's right, though. Eventually you will get bored of this, of babysitting a woman who can't even handle her own ex. And then what? Then nothing, because by that time Grant will have moved on, or he'll be in jail for violating a restraining order. Either way, you'll be safe. You can't know that. No, but I can make it a lot more likely. He pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm having security increased at the building. Doorman has Grant's photo, description, instructions to call police immediately if he shows up. Your school has the same. We're building walls around you, Sophie. Walls he can't get through. What if he finds a way? Then we deal with it, together. That word, together, hit harder than it should have. Sophie couldn't remember the last time someone had used it like that. Like she wasn't alone in this. I should let you go, she said. I'm sure you have better things to do than eat Thai food with someone else's problem. Roman didn't move. I'm exactly where I want to be. Why? Because I like you. Because you're smart and strong and deserve better than what you got. And because sitting in my empty apartment thinking about quarterly projections sounds boring as hell compared to this. Sophie almost smiled. This is more interesting than quarterly projections? Everything is more interesting than quarterly projections. They finished eating. Roman helped her clean up, showed her how to work the apartment's security system, made sure she had his number programmed into her phone under multiple entries in case Grant somehow got access to her contacts. Call me if anything feels wrong, he said at the door. I don't care what time it is. You call. I will. He paused, hand on the doorknob. You're going to be okay, Sophie. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you are. After he left, Sophie locked the door and stood in the quiet apartment. Her phone buzzed 3 more times before midnight. Unknown numbers, blocked immediately. She crawled into bed, pulled the covers up, and waited for sleep that didn't come. The next morning, Jennifer called. The restraining order had been filed. Grant would be served within 48 hours. How angry is this going to make him? Sophie asked. On a scale of 1 to 10, probably an 8, maybe a 9, but Jennifer's voice was matter-of-fact. But that's okay. We want his reaction on record. If he violates the order, it's immediate grounds for arrest. And if he doesn't, if he just waits, then he waits, and eventually he moves on. They usually do. Usually. Not always. Sophie spent the day lesson planning from the apartment, trying to focus on second-grade math standards while her phone collected evidence of harassment. 12 texts by noon, 7 calls, all from different numbers. Rachel came by around 2 with clothes from Sophie's apartment, her mail, the plant from her kitchen windowsill that was somehow still alive. I grabbed everything I thought you'd need, Rachel said, setting bags on the counter. Also, your super says Grant's been by twice asking about you. He didn't let him in. Did he call the police? No, Grant didn't technically do anything illegal, just knocked on your door, asked if you were home. Sophie sank onto the couch. This is never going to end. Yes, it will. Rachel sat beside her. I know it feels impossible right now, but it will. He'll get bored or scared of the consequences, or he'll find some other poor woman to fixate on. That's a terrible thought, but probably true. Rachel looked around the apartment. So, this is nice. It's too nice. I feel like I'm playing house in someone else's life. Has Roman tried anything? Made any moves? No, he's been... Sophie struggled for the word. Professional, kind. He brings me food and checks that I'm okay, but he's never pushed for anything more. Huh. What? Nothing. It's just... That's weird, right? Rich guy, beautiful apartment, damsel in distress. Usually there's an angle. Maybe there isn't. Maybe he's just a decent person. Maybe. Rachel didn't sound convinced. Just be careful, okay? I know you're vulnerable right now, and I don't want you jumping from one bad situation to another. I'm not jumping anywhere. I'm just trying to survive until Grant leaves me alone. Rachel left around 5. Sophie made herself dinner from groceries she found in the fridge. Had Roman stocked it? Or was there a service that did that? And settled in to grade papers. Her phone rang at 8 p.m. Roman. How are you holding up? I'm okay, restless, not used to being stuck inside. Want to go for a walk? Sophie looked out the window at the dark street below. I don't think that's a good idea. I meant with me. There's a park 2 blocks away, well lit, lots of people. You could use some air. She should have said no, should have kept her distance, maintained boundaries. But the apartment walls felt like they were closing in, and the thought of fresh air, of movement, was too tempting. Okay, give me 10 minutes. Roman met her in the lobby. They walked to the park in comfortable silence. October air, cool enough to need a jacket, but not cold yet. Trees losing their leaves in slow motion. I talked to Jennifer, Roman said. Grant's being served tomorrow morning, at his office. That's going to humiliate him. Good. Maybe humiliation will accomplish what reason couldn't. They walked past a playground, empty swings moving slightly in the breeze. Sophie thought about her students, wondered if any of them came to this park. Wondered when she'd see them again. Can I ask you something personal? She said. Sure. Your sister, the one with the X, is she really okay now? Roman was quiet for a moment. Mostly. She has bad days, moments when something triggers her and she's right back there. But yeah, she's built a good life, better than what she had with him. How long did it take? A couple of years before she stopped looking over her shoulder. Maybe longer before she could trust someone new. That's a long time. Trauma doesn't run on a schedule. They reached a bench overlooking a small pond, sat down. The water reflected streetlights in fractured patterns. I'm sorry I keep questioning your motives, Sophie said. It's not fair to you. It's self-preservation. I don't take it personally. Still, you've been nothing but kind, and I keep acting like you have some secret agenda. Maybe I do. Maybe my secret agenda is being able to look at myself in the mirror and know I did the right thing when it mattered. Roman stretched his legs out. Not everything has to be complicated, Sophie. Sometimes people just help because it's the right thing to do. I want to believe that. Then believe it. Her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, saw another text from yet another unknown number, started to block it, then stopped. The message was different this time. I've been patient. I've been understanding. But you're pushing me too far. If you don't call me back by midnight, there will be consequences. Sophie showed it to Roman. His face hardened. Forward that to Jennifer, and don't respond. What kind of consequences do you think he means? Nothing he can actually follow through on. He's trying to scare you into breaking. It's working. Roman turned to face her directly. Sophie, look at me. Grant Mercer is a coward. He goes after women who can't fight back because it makes him feel powerful. But put someone in his path who won't back down and he folds. I've seen it 100 times. He's going to keep making threats until he realizes they don't work anymore, and then he's going to move on. You keep saying that, but what if you're wrong? What if he's different? Then we adapt. But I'm not wrong. They walked back to the apartment building in silence. At the elevator, Roman pressed the button for 4, then hesitated. Do you want me to stay for a while? I can work from your couch if it helps you feel safer. Sophie wanted to say yes. Wanted the company, the sense of not being alone with her thoughts and Grant's threats. But something stopped her. I'll be okay. The security system's armed. The doorman knows not to let anyone up. I should be fine. You sure? Yeah, but thanks for offering. He nodded, pressed the button for his own floor. She didn't ask which one. Call if that changes. Alone in the apartment, Sophie locked every lock and checked them twice. Set her phone on the nightstand, volume up in case the school called or Jennifer needed her or Roman. She stopped that thought. Roman wasn't her boyfriend, wasn't her protector, not really. He was just someone helping out of the goodness of his heart, or guilt about his sister, or because he had nothing better to do. Eventually, this would end. Grant would leave her alone, or get arrested, or something would shift. And then she'd go back to her real life, her tiny apartment, her actual problems. This was temporary. All of it. Her phone buzzed one more time before midnight. Last chance, Sophie. Call me, or I promise you'll regret it. She forwarded it to Jennifer, blocked the number, and turned off her phone entirely. Let him promise whatever he wanted. She was done being afraid. At least that's what she told herself as she lay awake, listening to every sound in the building, waiting for something to go wrong. Grant was served with the restraining order at 10:47 a.m. on a Thursday morning. Sophie knew the exact time because Jennifer called her 30 seconds after it happened. He's been served. The process server said he turned white, then red, then started making threats, all of which were documented. Sophie was sitting at the dining table with her laptop open, pretending to work on a unit about fractions. What kind of threats? The usual. He'd fight this, he'd make me regret it, his father would have my license. Nothing actionable, but it's all in the report. Jennifer's voice was brisk, professional. The order is effective immediately. No contact, direct or indirect. He comes within 200 feet of you, he goes to jail. 200 feet isn't very far. It's enough. And Sophie? Expect some kind of reaction. He's going to be angry. The reaction came 40 minutes later. Sophie's phone started ringing. Different numbers, one after another, each call lasting exactly long enough to go to voicemail before the next one started. She counted 12 and 15 minutes before they stopped. Then the texts began. You think a piece of paper scares me? This is harassment. I'm the victim here. You and your rich boyfriend are going to pay. My father's already contacted his attorney. You have no idea what you've started. I loved you. I would have given you everything, and this is how you repay me. Sophie forwarded each one to Jennifer, hands shaking so badly she could barely type. Her phone was a weapon now, evidence accumulating with every message, but it felt like holding live ammunition. Roman called at noon. Jennifer told me he's losing it. How are you doing? I don't know, scared, angry, tired. Sophie pressed her fingers against her temples. He won't stop calling. I know, I'm getting them too. Sophie's head snapped up. What? He's been calling my office, my cell, even tried the main number for Devereaux Holdings. 17 calls in the last hour. My assistant is documenting everything. Roman, I'm so sorry. I never meant for you to... Stop. This isn't your fault. Grant made his choices. He's dealing with the consequences. But he's harassing you because of me. He's harassing me because he's a child who didn't get his way. There's a difference. She heard papers rustling. I'm leaving the office early. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't answer the door for anyone else. He hung up before she could argue. Sophie sat staring at her phone as it lit up again with another call. Unknown number. She let it ring. The voicemail notification popped up. Against her better judgment, she listened. Grant's voice, tight with barely controlled rage. You really think you're safe with him? You think Roman Devereaux gives a shit about you? He's using you, Sophie, to get back at me for something, to feel like a hero. I don't know. But the second this gets boring, he'll drop you. And when he does, I'll be right here, waiting. I'm always going to be here. You can't get away from me. You can't... The message cut off. Sophie deleted it with shaking hands, then forwarded the notification to Jennifer anyway. Roman arrived 18 minutes later with groceries and a grim expression. He set the bags on the counter, started unpacking without a word. bread, cheese, fresh vegetables, things that suggested he planned to stay a while. You don't have to babysit me, Sophie said. I'm not. I'm making lunch. He pulled out a cutting board. And I figured you might want company. People shouldn't be alone when they're dealing with this kind of thing. I've been alone for 2 years, which is probably 2 years too long. He started chopping tomatoes with practiced efficiency. My sister used to say the worst part wasn't the abuse. It was the isolation. The way he made her feel like she was the only person in the world dealing with this, like it was somehow her fault. It kind of was my fault, though. I'm the one who dated him, who stayed when I should have left earlier. Roman's knife paused mid-slice. You know that's bullshit, right? Is it? Yes. Grant showed you one face until you were committed, then changed. That's how abusers work. They don't lead with violence and control. They lead with charm and attention and making you feel special. By the time you see what's underneath, you're already in too deep. Sophie leaned against the counter. You sound like my therapist. Your therapist sounds smart. He resumed chopping. How long did you see them? 6 months after I left. Then I couldn't afford it anymore. You should go back. On a teacher's salary? Not happening. What if I... No. Sophie cut him off. You're already doing too much. I can't take any more from you. It's not taking if I'm offering. It feels like taking. It feels like I'm this broken thing you're trying to fix, and eventually you're going to realize I'm not worth the effort. Roman set down the knife, turned to face her fully. Do you hear yourself right now? That's Grant talking, not you. He spent 3 years convincing you that you're worthless, and you're still believing him. Maybe he was right. He wasn't. And the fact that you're standing here, that you left him, that you filed for a restraining order despite being terrified, all of that proves he was wrong. Sophie's throat felt tight. I don't feel brave. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what brave looks like. It's not fearlessness. It's being scared shitless and doing it anyway. Her phone buzzed. Another text. She didn't look at it. How many is that now? Roman asked. I stopped counting at 30. Good. Let Jennifer count. That's what she's paid for. He went back to making sandwiches, moving around the kitchen like he belonged there. Grilled cheese, okay? You don't have to cook for me. I know, but I'm hungry, and making food for one person is depressing, so humor me. They ate at the counter, the silence more comfortable than it should have been. Sophie's phone continued its steady rhythm of buzzing and ringing, a metronome of Grant's deteriorating composure. Does it ever stop? She asked. The feeling like you're waiting for something terrible to happen? Eventually, not all at once, but slowly you start to realize whole hours have gone by without thinking about it. Then whole days. Then you wake up one morning and it's just background noise instead of the main event. How long did it take your sister? Longer than it should have, but she had to do it alone. You don't. Sophie looked at him. Really looked. Why are you doing this, Roman? The real reason. He set down his sandwich, considered the question. You want complete honesty? Please. Because I have all this money and power and influence, and most days it doesn't mean anything. I go to meetings, I make deals, I move numbers around on spreadsheets, and at the end of the day, I've accomplished exactly nothing that matters. He met her eyes. But this? Helping you? This actually means something. This is real. So I'm your meaning of life crisis? Maybe. Is that okay? Sophie almost smiled. I guess it's better than being someone's obsession. Low bar. Yeah. Roman's phone rang. He glanced at it, frowned. It's Jennifer. He answered, listened, his expression hardening. When? No, don't tell her yet. I'll handle it. He hung up. Tell me what? Sophie asked. Grant went to your apartment, tried to break down your door. Your neighbor called the police. The room tilted. Did they arrest him? No, he was gone by the time they arrived. But there's damage to your door and the neighbor gave a statement. It's a clear violation of the restraining order. Sophie's hands were shaking again. He's not going to stop. He's just going to keep escalating until the police catch him in the act and he goes to jail, which is what's going to happen. Roman's voice was firm. Jennifer's filing a motion for a violation hearing. With the neighbor's testimony and the property damage, he's looking at criminal charges. He'll just post bail. His father will get him out. Maybe. But each time he violates the order, the consequences get worse. Eventually, even a federal judge can't protect him. Sophie wanted to believe that, wanted to trust that the system would work, that justice would prevail, all the things she'd been taught growing up. But she'd also learned that men with money and connections played by different rules. Her phone rang. She looked at the screen, felt her stomach drop. It was her mother. "I have to take this," she said, walking to the bedroom for privacy. "Sophie, honey, I just got the strangest call." Her mother's voice was confused, concerned. "From Grant Mercer. He said you've been making false accusations against him, that you've taken out a restraining order based on lies." Sophie closed her eyes. "Mom, he sounded very upset. He said you're staying with some man, that this person has been putting ideas in your head." "Grant is harassing me, has been for months. The restraining order is real, and it's necessary." "But sweetheart, you never mentioned any of this. If things were that bad, why didn't you tell me?" "Because every time I tried, you told me I was overreacting, that Grant was a nice boy from a good family, that I should be grateful someone like him was interested in me." A silence on the other end. Then, carefully, "I never said that." "You did, Mom, multiple times. When I told you he was controlling, you said he was just protective. When I said he scared me, you said I was being dramatic." "Sophie, I would never—" "You did. And now he's broken into my apartment, violated a restraining order, and is calling my family trying to make me look crazy. So forgive me if I don't want to relitigate this conversation." "There's no need to be hostile. I'm your mother. I'm just trying to understand what's happening." Sophie pressed her free hand against her forehead. "What's happening is that I left an abusive relationship 2 years ago, and Grant won't let it go. That's it. That's the whole story. And this man you're staying with, Grant says Roman is helping me stay safe. That's all. He's not putting ideas in my head or manipulating me or whatever Grant told you. He's just giving me a place to stay where Grant can't find me." "I see." Her mother's tone suggested she didn't see it all. "Well, I hope you know what you're doing. Getting involved with a new man so quickly after—" "I'm not involved with him. He's helping me. There's a difference." "If you say so, I just don't want to see you make another mistake." Sophie felt something crack inside her. "Another mistake? You mean like dating Grant in the first place?" "I didn't say that." "You didn't have to. Look, Mom, I need to go. But please don't take any more calls from Grant. Don't engage with him. He's trying to use you to get to me." "Sophie." She hung up, stood in the bedroom trying to breathe through the tightness in her chest. Of course Grant had called her mother. Of course he'd found a way to make himself the victim, to paint Sophie as unstable and ungrateful. When she came back out, Roman took one look at her face and said, "What happened?" "Grant called my mother, told her I'm making false accusations, that you're manipulating me." Of course he did. She believed him, or at least she didn't not believe him. She thinks I'm making another mistake. Roman's jaw tightened. "Do you want me to talk to her?" "And say what? That I'm not crazy? That her daughter's ex-boyfriend is actually a dangerous stalker? She won't believe you any more than she believes me." "Then what do you need?" Sophie sank onto the couch. "I need this to be over. I need Grant to just disappear or move on or get arrested. I need to stop feeling like I'm losing my mind." Roman sat beside her, not touching, just present. "This is going to get worse before it gets better. You know that, right?" "Yeah." "Grant's losing control. The restraining order, the call's not working, the fact that you're not caving, it's all backing him into a corner, and cornered animals are dangerous. So what do I do? Stay here, stay safe. Let the legal system do its job. And don't engage with him, no matter what he says or does." "What if the legal system doesn't work? What if he keeps violating the order and nothing happens?" "Then we escalate. We go to the media if we have to. We make enough noise that ignoring it becomes impossible." Roman's voice was calm, certain. "I've dealt with men like Grant before. They thrive in the dark, in situations they can control. Shine a light on them, make their behavior public, and they fold." Sophie wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that there was a path through this that didn't end with her looking over her shoulder for the rest of her life. Her phone rang again. This time it was the police. "Ms. Caldwell, this is Officer Martinez with the Chicago PD. We're at your apartment on Lakewood. Your neighbor reported someone trying to break down your door." "I know. My lawyer told me. Did you catch him? No, ma'am. He was gone when we arrived. But we have evidence of forced entry and a clear description from your neighbor. We're issuing a warrant for Grant Mercer's arrest for violation of a protective order and criminal damage to property. Sophie felt a rush of something she couldn't quite name. Relief? Vindication? Fear? What happens now? We'll attempt to locate and apprehend Mr. Mercer. In the meantime, I'd advise staying somewhere he doesn't know about. Do you have a safe place to go? Yes? I'm staying with a friend. Good. Keep your phone on. If he contacts you or you see him anywhere, call 911 immediately. Don't try to handle it yourself. After she hung up, Sophie relayed the conversation to Roman. There's a warrant out for his arrest, she said, still not quite believing it. This is real. He's actually going to face consequences. Finally, Roman pulled out his phone, typed something. I'm having the building security briefed. If Grant shows up here, he won't make it past the lobby. You think he'll come here? I think he's desperate and angry and not thinking clearly, which means he's capable of anything. The afternoon dissolved into a strange kind of waiting. Sophie tried to work on lesson plans, but her concentration was shot. Roman made calls from the dining table, his voice low and authoritative as he rearranged his schedule, delegated meetings, built walls of security and preparation around them both. Around 6, Jennifer called with an update. Grant hasn't been located yet. His office says he left at noon and hasn't been back. His apartment appears empty. His car isn't at any of his usual locations. So he's hiding, Sophie said. Probably, or planning. Either way, the warrant stands. He turns up anywhere. He's arrested on sight. After dinner, takeout that Roman insisted on ordering despite Sophie's protests, they settled into an uneasy routine. Roman worked on his laptop while Sophie graded papers she'd had someone collect from her classroom. The silence was broken only by the occasional buzz of her phone with yet another message from yet another number. Does he ever sleep? She asked around 9, after the 20th text of the evening. Apparently not. Roman looked up from his screen. You should try, though. You look exhausted. I won't be able to sleep knowing he's out there somewhere. Then at least rest. Lie down. Close your eyes. I'll be right here. Sophie started to argue, then realized how tired she actually was. The adrenaline that had been carrying her for days was finally wearing off, leaving behind bone-deep exhaustion. She went to the bedroom, changed into pajamas, crawled under covers that were too expensive and too soft, closed her eyes and waited for sleep that wouldn't come. At some point, she must have drifted off because she woke to the sound of breaking glass. Sophie sat up, heart pounding, trying to orient herself in the dark room. The apartment was quiet except for there. Another sound from the living room. She grabbed her phone, hands shaking so badly she could barely unlock it, crept to the bedroom door, opened it a crack. The living room was dark, empty, the windows intact. Sophie? Roman's voice from the hallway. You okay? She nearly collapsed with relief. I thought I heard something. You probably did. Someone dropped a bottle in the alley. Woke me up too. He was standing in the hallway in sweatpants and a t-shirt, looking rumpled and half asleep. But the apartment's secure, I checked. You're here. You stayed. I told you I would. I thought you meant you'd stay until I went to bed. I meant I'd stay until you felt safe. That hasn't happened yet, so here I am. He gestured toward the couch. Been sleeping out here. Figured if anything happened, I'd hear it first. Sophie didn't know what to say to that. Didn't know how to process someone who kept their promises without being asked, who stayed without expecting anything in return. You should go back to sleep, Roman said gently. I'll keep watch. That's not your job. Maybe not, but it's what I'm doing anyway. She wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he'd done enough, that she couldn't keep taking without giving anything back. But the truth was, she felt safer knowing he was there, and maybe that was okay. Maybe accepting help didn't make her weak. Thank you, she said quietly. Get some rest, Sophie. She went back to bed, left the door cracked open this time, listened to the sounds of Roman settling back onto the couch, the apartment creaking and breathing around them. And somehow, finally, she fell asleep. The call came at 3:47 a.m. Sophie's phone lit up the dark bedroom, vibrating against the nightstand. She grabbed it, saw Jennifer's name on the screen. Hello? Sophie, it's Jennifer. I need you to listen carefully and not panic. Ice flooded Sophie's veins. What happened? Grant attacked a woman outside a bar in Wicker Park about 2 hours ago. She's alive, but she's in the hospital. The police have him in custody. Sophie couldn't breathe. What? The woman was brunette, about your height and build. She was walking alone. Grant approached her, called her by your name, and when she didn't respond, he became violent. Jennifer's voice was steady, clinical. Witnesses intervened. Police were called. He's been arrested. He's not getting out this time. Oh my God. Sophie was shaking. The woman, is she okay? She will be. Broken nose, some bruising. It could have been much worse. Roman appeared in the doorway, clearly having heard the phone. Sophie looked at him, saw her own horror reflected in his face. There's more, Jennifer said. When the police arrested Grant, they found photos. Of you. Hundreds of them. From the past 6 months. Outside your apartment, your school, grocery stores, coffee shops. He's been following you this entire time. The room spun. Sophie grabbed the edge of the nightstand to steady herself. He was stalking me. Yes. And the photos, combined with the assault and the restraining order violations, mean he's looking at serious charges. Stalking, assault, criminal harassment. He's not walking away from this. After Jennifer hung up, Sophie sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what she'd just heard. Grant had been watching her for months, following her, taking photos, planning something, and some other woman had paid the price for looking like her. Sophie, Roman's voice, quiet and careful. Talk to me. He thought she was me, that woman. He attacked her because he thought she was me. I know. She's in the hospital because of me. No. She's in the hospital because Grant Mercer is a violent criminal who made a choice to hurt someone. That's not on you. But if I just talked to him or tried harder to make him understand, stop. Roman crossed the room, knelt in front of her so they were eye level. None of this is your fault. Not the stalking, not the attack, not any of it. Grant did this, not you. He had hundreds of photos of me, her voice cracked. He was watching me all this time and I didn't even know. Which is terrifying and violating and completely unfair. But Sophie, he's in custody now. He can't hurt you. Can't hurt anyone else. It's over. Is it though? His father's a judge. He has money, lawyers, and he just brutally assaulted an innocent woman in front of multiple witnesses while violating a restraining order. Even a federal judge can't make that disappear. Roman's hands hovered near hers, not touching, but close. You're safe. I promise you're safe. Sophie wanted to believe him, wanted to feel the relief that should come with knowing Grant was in custody. But all she felt was numb. I need to see them, she said suddenly. The photos. I need to know what he was doing. Sophie, that's not a good idea. I need to know, Roman. I need to see what I missed, what I should have noticed. You didn't miss anything. He was careful. That's what stalkers do. They learn your patterns. They stay hidden until they're ready to strike. Let me see them. Roman studied her face, then sighed. Okay, but we're doing this together, and if it gets to be too much, we stop. He called Jennifer, asked her to send over the police report and accompanying evidence. 30 minutes later, Sophie's email pinged with a secure link. She opened it on her laptop, started scrolling through the photos. Grant had been meticulous. Pictures of her leaving her apartment building at 7:15 every morning, walking to the train station, entering her school, leaving at 4 p.m., stopping at the grocery store on Wednesdays, meeting Rachel for coffee on Saturday mornings. Every routine, every pattern, documented and cataloged. He knew everything, Sophie whispered. Where I'd be, when I'd be there. He was just waiting for the right moment. And he never got it, because you were smart enough to accept help, to file the restraining order, to stay somewhere safe. Sophie kept scrolling. The photos got more recent, more disturbing. Her bedroom window from the street, the lobby of her building, her classroom taken through a window from the parking lot, and then, at the bottom of the file, something that made her blood run cold. Photos of Roman, leaving her building, getting into his car, walking into restaurants. The timestamp dated to 3 days ago. He was watching you too, she said. Roman leaned over, saw the images. His expression hardened. Son of a bitch. You could have been hurt because of me. That woman was hurt because of me. How many other people? Stop spiraling. This ends now. Grant's in custody. The evidence is overwhelming, and he's going away for a long time. You survived this. That woman survived this. It's over. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the beginning of something else, something Sophie couldn't quite name. Jennifer called again at dawn with more news. The woman Grant attacked was pressing charges. More photos had been found in Grant's apartment, along with journals detailing his observations of Sophie's life. The district attorney was building a case that could put him away for years. They want you to come in and give a statement, Jennifer said, about the stalking, the harassment, all of it. The more evidence we provide, the stronger the case. Okay, when? Today, if possible. This afternoon? Sophie agreed. Hung up. Looked at Roman, who'd been listening to the whole conversation. I'll take you, he said before she could ask. You don't have to. I know. I'm doing it anyway. They drove to the police station in silence. Sophie's hands were twisted in her lap, her mind replaying every moment of the past week. The restaurant, the threats, the photos. That woman in the hospital who'd done nothing wrong except look like someone else. The interview lasted 3 hours. Sophie walked 2 detectives through everything. The relationship, the abuse, the escalation after she left. She showed them texts, emails, call logs. Described the night at the restaurant, Roman's intervention, the restraining order. When they showed her the photos Grant had taken, she had to take a break to throw up in the bathroom. Roman waited outside the interview room the entire time. When Sophie finally emerged, exhausted and hollowed out, he was there with water and a steady presence that felt like the only solid thing in the world. How bad was it? He asked on the drive back. They think he was planning something. The journals, the photos, they found detailed notes about my schedule, my routines, when I was most vulnerable. Sophie stared out the window. They said if that woman hadn't looked like me, if witnesses hadn't intervened, he probably would have come after me directly. But he didn't. You're safe. Because of luck. Because some poor woman happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. No. Because you were smart and careful and accepted help when you needed it. Don't discount that. They pulled up to the apartment building. Sophie couldn't make herself get out of the car. What do I do now? She asked. Grant's in jail, but that doesn't fix what he did. It doesn't undo the past 2 years of being afraid. It doesn't help that woman he hurt. It doesn't make any of this okay. Roman turned to face her. No, it doesn't. But it means you get to start over. Build a life without looking over your shoulder, without organizing your entire existence around avoiding one person. I don't know how to do that. Neither did my sister at first, but she learned, and you will too. Sophie finally looked at him. Why do you care so much? Really? Not the standard answer about helping people or doing the right thing. Why you? Roman was quiet for a long moment. Because I spent 15 years building an empire and forgot to build a life. I have money and power and influence, and at the end of the day, I go home to an empty apartment and wonder what any of it's for. And then I met you, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like what I was doing actually mattered. Like I was making a difference that couldn't be measured in quarterly reports. So I'm your charity project. No, you're someone I care about, someone I want to see thrive. There's a difference. Sophie studied his face, looking for the lie, the angle, the catch, but all she saw was honesty. I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done. You don't have to thank me. You just have to let yourself heal. That's enough. They went upstairs together. Sophie crashed on the couch, suddenly too tired to make it to the bedroom. Roman disappeared into the kitchen, emerged with tea she didn't remember requesting but needed anyway. Jennifer says the hearing for the restraining order violation is tomorrow, Sophie said. I have to testify. I'll be there. You don't... Sophie, I'll be there. She sipped her tea, let the warmth spread through her chest. What happens after? After the hearing? After Grant's sentenced? After all of this is done? Whatever you want. You go back to teaching. You find a new apartment, or keep your old one. You rebuild your life however you want it to look. And us? The question hung in the air. Roman set down his own tea, considered his answer carefully. That depends on what you want. I'm not going anywhere unless you want me to, but I'm also not going to push for something you're not ready for. I don't even know what I'm ready for. I just know that when you're around, I feel safer, and when you're not, I feel like I'm missing something. That's enough for now. We don't have to figure out the rest tonight. Sophie nodded, too exhausted to untangle her feelings any further. She finished her tea, let Roman help her to the bedroom, accepted his quiet goodnight without protest. As she drifted off to sleep, she thought about that woman in the hospital, wondered if she knew how close she'd come to something worse, wondered if she'd ever feel safe walking alone again. And then she thought about Grant, sitting in a cell, his carefully constructed life falling apart around him. For the first time in 2 years, Sophie didn't feel afraid of him. She felt sorry for him. Not because he didn't deserve what was happening, he absolutely did, but because he'd had everything, and he'd destroyed it all because he couldn't let one woman go. That was the real tragedy. Not what he'd done to her, but what he'd done to himself. Sophie fell asleep with that thought, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, she didn't dream about running. The hearing was scheduled for 2 in the afternoon. Sophie woke up at 6, couldn't get back to sleep, and spent the morning pacing the apartment while Roman made phone calls and pretended not to notice her unraveling. "You don't have to do this," he said around 11 after she'd walked the same circuit around the living room for the 10th time. "Jennifer can handle the hearing without you. I need to be there. I need to see him face consequences. Even if it means seeing him again?" Sophie stopped pacing. She hadn't thought about that part. Grant would be there, in the courtroom, probably with expensive lawyers and his federal judge father sitting behind him. He'd look at her with those eyes that used to make her stomach flip and now just made her nauseous. "I can do this," she said, more to herself than Roman. "I know you can. I'm just making sure you want to." At 1:30, they arrived at the courthouse. Jennifer met them in the hallway outside the courtroom, her expression grim. "Grant's father is here, Judge Mercer. He's brought 3 attorneys, all from top firms. They're going to argue that Grant was having a mental health crisis, that he needs treatment, not punishment." "That's bullshit," Sophie said. "I know, but it's a common tactic. Make the defendant look sympathetic. Paint the victim as vindictive." Jennifer's jaw tightened. "Don't let them rattle you. Answer the questions directly, stick to the facts, and don't engage with their attempts to twist your words." The courtroom was smaller than Sophie expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, rows of benches that reminded her of church pews. Grant sat at the defense table in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, flanked by lawyers who looked like they charged by the minute. He turned when Sophie entered. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, Sophie saw the man she'd fallen in love with 5 years ago. Handsome, charming, the kind of guy who opened doors and remembered her coffee order. Then she blinked and saw what was really there. Cold calculation, barely contained rage, and something that looked almost like ownership. She looked away first, let Roman guide her to a seat behind Jennifer's table. Grant's father, Judge Mercer, sat in the front row of the defense side. He was older than Sophie expected, gray hair and wire-rimmed glasses, the kind of face that looked stern even in repose. He didn't acknowledge her existence. The judge, not Grant's father, a different judge, entered and everyone stood. The bailiff called the case. Jennifer stood, began presenting evidence. The photos came first, projected on a screen for the whole courtroom to see. Sophie outside her apartment building, at her school, walking to the train. The timestamp showed a pattern going back 6 months, sometimes multiple photos per day. "Your Honor," Jennifer said, "these images demonstrate a clear pattern of stalking behavior. Mr. Mercer was systematically documenting Ms. Caldwell's movements, learning her routines, and preparing for something." One of Grant's lawyers stood. "Objection? Ms. Krause is speculating about my client's intent." "Sustained. Stick to the facts, counselor," Jennifer nodded. "The facts are that Mr. Mercer violated a restraining order by maintaining surveillance of Ms. Caldwell. He then assaulted another woman he mistook for Ms. Caldwell, causing bodily harm. He damaged Ms. Caldwell's property in an attempt to force entry to her residence. These are not the actions of someone in crisis. These are the actions of someone who believes he is above the law." Grant's lead attorney, a silver-haired man in his 60s, rose with practiced ease. "Your Honor, my client has never been in trouble with the law before. He's a successful professional from a respected family. He and Ms. Caldwell had a complicated relationship that ended badly, and he made some poor decisions in the aftermath, but this hardly warrants the draconian measures being proposed." "Poor decisions?" Jennifer's voice could have cut glass. "He stalked her for 6 months. He violated a protective order. He assaulted an innocent woman. At what point do we stop calling these poor decisions and start calling them crimes? The judge looked at Grant. Mr. Mercer, do you have anything to say for yourself? Grant stood, all polished contrition. Your Honor, I deeply regret my actions. I was going through a difficult time after my relationship with Sophie ended. I wasn't thinking clearly. I never meant to hurt anyone. Sophie's hands clenched in her lap. Roman's hand covered hers, steady and warm. You attacked a woman who wasn't even me, Sophie said before she could stop herself. The judge's eyes shifted to her. Ms. Caldwell, you'll have a chance to speak. Mr. Mercer, continue. I thought I wasn't in my right mind. I saw someone who looked like Sophie, and I just... Grant's voice broke convincingly. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm willing to seek help, to do whatever it takes to make this right. You can't make this right, Sophie said, louder this time. You can't undo what you did to that woman. You can't give me back the 2 years I spent being afraid of you. Ms. Caldwell, the judge said, not unkindly, you'll get your turn. Jennifer called Sophie to the stand. She walked up on shaking legs, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, sat in the witness box and tried not to look at Grant. Jennifer took her through the timeline. The relationship, the escalating control, the night she left, the 2 years of harassment that followed, the restaurant, the threats, the phone calls from different numbers. And when did you first learn about the photographs? Jennifer asked. After Grant was arrested, the police showed them to me. There were hundreds, from the past 6 months. Places I went every day, places I thought were safe. He was always there, watching. How did that make you feel? Violated, terrified, like I'd never actually escaped him at all. One of Grant's attorneys stood for cross-examination. He was younger than the lead counsel, with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. Ms. Caldwell, you testified that Mr. Mercer was controlling during your relationship. Can you give specific examples? He monitored my phone, questioned where I went and who I talked to, got angry if I spent time with friends or family without him. Did he ever physically harm you during the relationship? Sophie hesitated. He grabbed me sometimes, hard enough to leave marks. But you never reported this to police, did you? No. Why not? Because I was scared. Because I thought it was my fault. Because he always apologized after and made me believe it wouldn't happen again. So we only have your word that any of this occurred. Jennifer stood. Objection. Badgering the witness. Sustained. Counselor, move on. The lawyer smiled. Ms. Caldwell, isn't it true that you began a relationship with Roman Devereaux almost immediately after your dinner with Mr. Mercer? Sophie's stomach dropped. We're not in a relationship. No? You're living in an apartment he owns. He's been paying your legal fees. You've been seen together multiple times. That sounds like a relationship to me. He's helping me stay safe. There's a difference. Is there? Or did you use Mr. Mercer's affection for you as an opportunity to trade up? A wealthy man intervenes at a restaurant, and suddenly you're claiming abuse, stalking, harassment. That's not what happened. Sophie's voice shook. Grant was threatening me before Roman ever showed up. He'd been stalking me for months before I even knew Roman existed. According to you. But we only have your version of events, don't we? Mr. Mercer's version is quite different. He says you were the one who couldn't let go, that you kept contacting him, trying to rekindle the relationship. That's a lie. Is it? Or is this whole thing an elaborate scheme to justify moving on with a wealthier man while destroying Mr. Mercer's reputation? Objection! Jennifer was on her feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Counsel is constructing a narrative completely unsupported by evidence. I'll allow it, but get to a question, Counselor. The lawyer turned back to Sophie. Ms. Caldwell, how much money has Mr. Devereaux spent on you in the past week? I don't know. I didn't ask him to. Thousands? Tens of thousands? The apartment alone must be worth several thousand a month. Add in the legal fees, the security, the meals. That's quite a lot for someone who claims this isn't a relationship. Sophie felt tears burning behind her eyes. He was helping me, that's all. Very generous help, almost like payment for services rendered. Your Honor, Jennifer started. I'll rephrase. Ms. Caldwell, Did you enter into any sort of agreement with Mr. Devereaux in exchange for this help? No, he offered. I accepted. There was no agreement. How convenient. The lawyer turned to the judge. No further questions. Sophie stepped down from the witness box, her legs barely holding her. She made it back to her seat, felt Roman's hand on her shoulder. You did great, he whispered. She didn't feel great. She felt exposed, like every insecurity Grant had spent 3 years building had just been broadcast to a roomful of strangers. Jennifer called the woman Grant had attacked. Her name was Maria Santos, and she looked fragile in a way that made Sophie's chest hurt. Bruises still visible on her face, one arm in a sling. Maria testified about the attack, walking home from a friend's birthday party. A man approaching her on the street, calling her Sophie. When she said that wasn't her name, he grabbed her, started screaming that she was lying, hit her when she tried to get away. I didn't understand what was happening, Maria said, her voice small. I thought he was crazy. Then I saw the look in his eyes and I realized he really believed I was someone else. And that somehow made it worse because it meant he wanted to hurt her so badly that he didn't care if he got the wrong person. Grant's lawyers tried to paint it as a case of mistaken identity, a terrible accident, but the witnesses who'd intervened told a different story. Grant hadn't just grabbed Maria. He'd hit her repeatedly, called her terrible names, told her she deserved everything she got for leaving him. The judge asked for a recess. Sophie escaped to the hallway, leaned against the wall trying to breathe. They're making me sound like a gold digger, she said when Roman followed her out. Like I made all of this up to get access to your money. That's their job, to create reasonable doubt, to muddy the waters. It doesn't mean anyone believes them. Grant's father is a judge. The lawyers look expensive. What if they win? What if he walks away from this? He won't. The evidence is too strong. The photos, the assault, the property damage. It's all documented. Jennifer knows what she's doing. Rachel appeared at the end of the hallway, practically running toward them. I got here as fast as I could. How bad is it? They're painting Sophie as the villain, Roman said, claiming she orchestrated this whole thing. That's insane. I'll testify. I saw how Grant treated her. I can corroborate everything. You might get the chance, Roman said. Jennifer's calling character witnesses next. They went back into the courtroom. Rachel took the stand, told stories that made Sophie want to sink through the floor. The time Grant shows up at Rachel's apartment at 2 a.m, demanding to know where Sophie was. The bruises Sophie tried to hide with long sleeves. The way she'd stopped laughing, stopped talking about the future, stopped being herself. She was terrified of him, Rachel said flatly, and she had every right to be. Grant's lawyer tried to discredit her, suggested she'd never liked Grant, that she'd driven a wedge between him and Sophie out of jealousy. Jealous of what? Rachel's voice was pure scorn. A man who controlled every aspect of my best friend's life, who isolated her from everyone who cared about her. Yeah, I hated him, because I watched him destroy her piece by piece. Sophie's sister testified next, then her former therapist, then Roman. Each one building a picture of who Grant really was behind the charming facade. When Roman took the stand, Grant's lawyers went after him hard, questioned his motives, his relationship with Sophie, his sudden interest in protecting a woman he'd just met. Mr. Devereaux, you have no prior relationship with Ms. Caldwell, correct? Correct? Yet you've spent considerable resources protecting her. Why? Because she needed help and I was in a position to provide it. How noble. And it has nothing to do with the fact that she's an attractive young woman? Roman's expression didn't change. It has everything to do with the fact that she was being stalked and threatened by a dangerous man. Her appearance is irrelevant. Is it? You invited her to live in your building, paid her legal fees, spent hours alone with her? That doesn't sound like simple altruism. I also have security working around the clock, lawyers on retainer, and resources most people don't. I use those resources to help someone in danger. If that makes me suspicious, so be it. You recorded Mr. Mercer without his knowledge in a restaurant. Some might call that invasion of privacy. Illinois is a one-party consent state. I was part of the conversation the moment I spoke up, and I'd do it again without hesitation because that recording is the reason we're here today instead of planning Ms. Caldwell's funeral. A ripple went through the courtroom. Grant's face flushed red. That's quite dramatic, Mr. Devereaux. Is it? Mr. Mercer stalked Ms. Caldwell for 6 months. He assaulted a woman he thought was her. What do you think would have happened if he'd found Ms. Caldwell alone? Grant's lawyer had no response to that. Roman stepped down, calm and unbothered, while Grant looked like he wanted to launch himself across the courtroom. The judge called another recess. This time, when they reconvened, it was for closing arguments. Jennifer stood first. Your Honor, the evidence in this case is overwhelming. Mr. Mercer violated a restraining order through stalking, property damage, and assault. He has shown no genuine remorse, only calculated contrition designed to avoid consequences. Ms. Caldwell deserves protection, and Maria Santos deserves justice. The only way to ensure both is to impose the maximum penalties allowed under law. Grant's lead attorney countered. Your Honor, my client made mistakes, serious mistakes, but he's not a monster. He's a man who lost the woman he loved and responded badly to that loss. He needs help, not incarceration. We're asking for mandatory counseling, probation, and supervised therapy. Give him the chance to prove he can change. The judge looked at Grant for a long moment, then at Sophie, then at the photos still displayed on the screen. Mr. Mercer, please stand. Grant stood, flanked by his lawyers. His father leaned forward in his seat. I've reviewed all the evidence in this case. The photographs showing systematic stalking, the testimony regarding the assault on Ms. Santos, the property damage to Ms. Caldwell's residence, the pattern of harassment despite multiple requests to cease contact. The judge's voice was measured, firm. This court finds you guilty of stalking in the first degree, assault causing bodily harm, violation of a protective order, and criminal damage to property. Grant's face went white. His father's expression didn't change. You are sentenced to 4 years in state prison, with possibility of parole after 2 years pending good behavior and completion of mandatory counseling. The restraining order protecting Ms. Caldwell is extended indefinitely. Any attempt to contact her, directly or indirectly, will result in additional charges. Grant started to speak. His lawyer put a hand on his arm, silencing him. Additionally, the judge continued, you will pay restitution to Ms. Santos for her medical expenses and trauma counseling. You will have no contact with either Ms. Caldwell or Ms. Santos for the duration of the restraining order. Do you understand these terms? Yes, Your Honor. Grant's voice was barely audible. Then this court is adjourned. The gavel came down. Grant was led away by bailiffs, his father following with tight-lipped fury. Sophie sat frozen, trying to process what had just happened. 4 years. Grant was going to prison for 4 years. Sophie? Roman's voice, gentle. You okay? I don't know. Is it over? Is it really over? The legal part is, the rest might take longer. Jennifer appeared looking satisfied. That went better than I expected. 4 years is substantial for a first-time offender. The judge clearly took the stalking and assault seriously. What about his father? Can he appeal? He can try, but the evidence is solid, the sentence is within legal guidelines, and frankly, Judge Mercer doesn't have as much pull as he thinks he does. Not when his son assaulted an innocent woman in front of witnesses. Sophie stood on shaking legs. Can I leave now? I need air. Roman guided her out of the courtroom, past reporters gathering in the hallway, past Grant's father who stared at her with undisguised contempt. They made it to the parking garage before Sophie's knees gave out. Roman caught her before she hit the ground, held her while she cried into his shirt. 2 years of fear, 6 months of stalking, 1 terrible week. It all came pouring out in ugly, gasping sobs that she couldn't control. It's okay, Roman murmured. You're okay. It's over. But it didn't feel over. It felt like the beginning of something else, something Sophie didn't have words for yet. They drove back to the apartment in silence. Sophie stared out the window, watching Chicago blur past. Somewhere in this city, Grant was being processed into the prison system. Somewhere, Maria Santos was recovering from injuries that should never have happened. Somewhere, Sophie's mother was probably reading about the trial in the news and forming opinions Sophie didn't want to hear. I should move out, Sophie said as they pulled up to the building. Go back to my apartment. You've done enough. Do you want to move out? I don't know what I want. I don't know how to... She stopped, frustrated. Everything's been about Grant for so long. Running from him, hiding from him, fighting him in court. Now he's gone and I don't know what to do with that. You live, you teach, You figure out who you are without fear running the show. What if I don't know how? Roman turned off the engine, faced her directly. Then you learn, and you don't have to do it alone unless you want to. They went upstairs. Sophie collapsed on the couch, exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. Roman disappeared into the kitchen, returned with tea and something stronger for himself. What happens now? Sophie asked. Whatever you want. You can stay here as long as you need. Go back to your place when you're ready. Rachel can help you pack up, get a fresh start somewhere Grant's never been. That's not what I meant. Roman set down his glass. Then what did you mean? Sophie took a breath, trying to find words for something she barely understood herself. What happens with us? You said you cared about me, that this mattered to you, but I don't know if that was about me specifically or just about helping someone. It's about you, Sophie. It's been about you since I heard Grant threatening you in that restaurant and realized I couldn't just walk away. But why? You don't know me. Not really. You know the scared version of me that's been running for 2 years? You don't know who I am when I'm not falling apart. Then let me find out. No pressure, no timeline, just let me be around while you figure out who that person is. Sophie wanted to say yes, wanted to let herself fall into the safety Roman represented, the steadiness that felt like solid ground. But something held her back. I don't know if I can trust this. Trust you, not because of anything you've done, but because the last time I trusted someone, it destroyed me. What if I'm reading this wrong? What if you get tired of broken things that need fixing? You're not broken, you're healing, and I'm not going anywhere. Roman moved closer, not touching, but near enough that Sophie could feel the warmth. I know you're scared. I know Grant spent years teaching you that love means control and pain and losing yourself. But that's not what this is. I'm not asking you to be anything other than who you are. I don't even know who that is anymore. So we'll figure it out together, or you'll figure it out alone and I'll still be here when you're done. Either way, you get to choose. Choice. That word again. The thing Grant had never given her. I need time, Sophie said finally. I need to get back to my life, my students, my routine. I need to remember what normal feels like before I can think about anything else. Okay. Just okay? You're not going to argue? Why would I argue? You know what you need. I'm just telling you I'll be here when you're ready. That's not the same as pushing. Sophie looked at him, really looked. Roman Devereaux wasn't conventionally perfect. He had lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled less than he should. His hands were calloused in odd places, like he did manual work sometimes despite the expensive suits. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from earning it, not inheriting it, and he was looking at her like she was worth waiting for. I should go back to teaching, she said. Face my principal, my students, get back to normal. When? Monday. Give myself the weekend to prepare. Okay, I'll drive you. Roman, or I'll arrange a car service, or I'll have security tail you discreetly. But you're not walking into that school alone the first day back, not until we're sure Grant's father isn't going to try something stupid. Sophie wanted to argue, but the truth was, the thought of walking into her school alone still made her stomach clench. Security tail, discreet, done. That night, Sophie lay in bed thinking about everything that had happened. A week ago, she'd been terrified, trapped, convinced she'd spend the rest of her life looking over her shoulder. Now Grant was in prison, she was safe, and a man who barely knew her had reorganized his entire life to make sure she stayed that way. She should have felt grateful, should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt untethered, like she'd been bracing against a strong wind for so long that now that it stopped, she didn't know how to stand upright. Her phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. Saw the news. 4 years, that's amazing. How are you holding up? Sophie typed back, I don't know. Still processing. Want company? Maybe tomorrow. Tonight I just need to think. Okay. Love you. Proud of you. Sophie set down her phone, stared at the ceiling. In the living room, she could hear Roman moving around, probably working on his laptop like he did most evenings. He'd taken to sleeping on the couch, claimed it was comfortable, never pushed to be anywhere else. She got up, padded into the living room. Roman looked up from his screen. Can't sleep? Can't stop thinking. Sophie sat on the other end of the couch. Tell me something about you that has nothing to do with helping me. Something real. Roman closed his laptop. What do you want to know? Anything. Your favorite food, your worst habit, what you wanted to be when you were a kid. Something that reminds me you're a person and not just my guardian angel. He smiled at that. I wanted to be a pilot. Thought flying would be the ultimate freedom. Turns out I'm afraid of heights. Seriously? Seriously. Can't even go up in the Willis Tower without getting dizzy. My sister thinks it's hilarious. What else? I'm terrible at keeping plants alive. I've killed every succulent anyone's ever given me, which is apparently impossible. I eat the same breakfast every morning because I hate making decisions before coffee. And I have a scar on my left shoulder from falling off a skateboard when I was 12. Sophie felt something loosen in her chest. Show me. Roman hesitated, then pulled his shirt over his head. There it was, a jagged white line across his shoulder blade. Sophie reached out before she could stop herself, traced the scar with her fingertips. That must have hurt. Like hell. Needed 15 stitches. My mom was furious because I'd been doing tricks she'd specifically told me not to try. Rebel. Idiot is more accurate. Sophie's hand was still on his shoulder. She should move it, should put distance between them. But his skin was warm under her fingers, and for the first time in a long time, touching someone didn't feel dangerous. Sophie, Roman's voice was rough. You should probably stop doing that unless you want this to go somewhere you're not ready for. She pulled her hand back. Sorry. Don't be sorry, just be sure. I'm not sure about anything, except that when you're around, I feel less like I'm drowning. That's enough for now. They sat in comfortable silence, the kind that didn't need filling. Eventually, Sophie went back to bed, fell asleep easier than she had in days, and dreamed about nothing at all. Monday morning arrived too fast and too slow at the same time. Sophie stood in front of her closet at 6 a.m., staring at clothes that suddenly felt like costumes for a person she wasn't sure she could play anymore. Teacher, professional, woman who had her life together. She picked a blue dress that Rachel had bought her for her birthday last year, the one she'd never worn because Grant said it made her look like she was trying too hard. Put it on, looked at herself in the mirror, and barely recognized the woman staring back. Roman knocked on the bedroom door. Coffee's ready, and your security detail is downstairs. This feels excessive. It's not. Grant's father has connections. I'm not taking chances until we're sure he's accepted the verdict. Sophie grabbed her school bag, followed Roman to the kitchen. He'd made her favorite breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit arranged on a plate like he actually cared how it looked. Small things that added up to something bigger. You didn't have to do this, she said. I wanted to. He poured coffee into a travel mug, handed it to her. First day back is hard. Figured you could use some fuel. Have you ever taught second grade? No, but I've given presentations to rooms full of hostile investors. Probably similar energy. Sophie almost laughed. 7-year-olds are tougher. I believe it. The car service Roman arranged was a black sedan with a driver named Marcus, who nodded politely and didn't ask questions. Sophie watched the city pass by, tried to calm the anxiety building in her chest. Her students would have questions. Her colleagues would want details. Everyone would look at her differently now. Principal Morrison met her in the parking lot, which should have been Sophie's first clue something was wrong. Sophie, welcome back. Can we talk in my office before you go to your classroom? They walked through hallways decorated with student artwork, past classrooms where teachers were setting up for the day. Morrison's office was small, practical, smelling faintly of coffee and dry erase markers. I wanted to give you a heads up, Morrison said, closing the door. Grant's father called the superintendent over the weekend. Tried to pressure him into putting you on administrative leave pending an investigation into your conduct. Sophie's stomach dropped. What conduct? He claims you've been having an inappropriate relationship with a parent, that you've been using school resources for personal matters, that your recent troubles make you unstable and a liability around children. Morrison held up a hand before Sophie could respond. The superintendent told him exactly where he could shove his concerns. You're a model teacher, your personal life is none of our business, and we don't bow to pressure from angry parents or angry federal judges. He's trying to destroy my career. He's trying, he's not succeeding, but I wanted you to know so you're prepared if he tries something else. Sophie sank into a chair. This is never going to end, is it? Grant's in prison and his father's still coming after me. For now, but men like Judge Mercer rely on intimidation. When that doesn't work, they usually move on. Morrison leaned against her desk. You're stronger than you think, Sophie. You survived a relationship that would have broken most people. You stood up in court and told the truth. You're still standing. That counts for something. I don't feel strong. I feel like I'm barely holding it together. That's what strength looks like most of the time. Not perfection, just showing up when it would be easier to give up.
But it was...
Sophie's classroom looked exactly as she'd left it. Student desks arranged in clusters, alphabet posters on the walls, a reading corner with beanbags and books. 22 7-year-olds were going to walk through that door in 30 minutes, expecting normalcy, and Sophie had to give it to them. She wrote the day's schedule on the board, set out worksheets, tried to remember what it felt like to be Teacher Sophie instead of Victim Sophie, or Survivor Sophie, or whatever label she was wearing this week. Her students arrived in a chaotic rush of backpacks and questions. They hugged her legs, told her about their week, showed her loose teeth and new shoes. Not one of them asked where she'd been or why. They just needed her to be present, to be steady, to be the adult who made their world make sense. Sophie taught fractions. She read a story about a bear who couldn't sleep. She refereed an argument about playground rules and helped a girl named Emma tie her shoe. By lunch, she remembered why she'd become a teacher in the first place. These kids didn't care about her problems. They just needed someone to show up and care about theirs. Rachel met her for lunch in her classroom, bringing sandwiches from the deli down the street. You look good, Rachel said. Different. Different how? Less like you're waiting for the sky to fall, more like you actually slept. Roman's been helping with that. He makes me eat real food and turn off my phone at reasonable hours. Sophie picked at her sandwich. Judge Mercer tried to get me fired. Seriously? What a piece of work. Morrison shut it down. But it's just another reminder that this isn't over. Grant's in prison, but his father's still out there, still trying to punish me. So what are you going to do? What can I do? Keep teaching, keep living. Hope he gets bored eventually. Rachel studied her face. What about Roman? You two figure out what you're doing yet? We're friends. He's helping me get back on my feet. Sophie, the man reorganized his entire life to keep you safe. That's not just friendship. I know, but I can't think about that yet. I need to remember who I am without Grant first. Then maybe I can figure out what I want. And if Roman gets tired of waiting, then I guess I'll know he wasn't the right person after all. Sophie crumpled her napkin. I can't make decisions based on fear anymore. Not fear of losing Grant, not fear of losing Roman. I have to figure out what I actually want, not what I'm afraid of. The weeks that followed fell into a rhythm Sophie hadn't expected to find. She taught during the day, went home to the apartment Roman still insisted she use, spent evenings grading papers while he worked on his laptop. They cooked together, argued about movies, fell into an easy domesticity that felt dangerous and safe at the same time. Roman never pushed, never asked for more than she could give, just existed in her space like he belonged there, steady as a heartbeat. One Friday night, 6 weeks after the trial, Sophie found herself actually laughing at something stupid Roman said about a conference call gone wrong. The sound surprised her, genuine amusement, not the forced kind she'd perfected during her relationship with Grant. What? Roman asked, noticing her expression. I can't remember the last time I laughed like that, without thinking about it first. That's good, right? It's weird. It feels like I should still be scared or angry or something, but I'm just here, living. Roman set down his wine glass. That's what healing looks like. Not dramatic transformation, just moments where you forget to be broken. I'm not sure I was ever broken, just bent out of shape by someone who wanted me smaller. You're getting your shape back. Sophie thought about that. About the woman she'd been before Grant, the one who laughed easily and trusted her instincts. About the woman she was becoming now, harder in some ways, but also clearer, less willing to accept less than she deserved. Roman, can I ask you something? Always. Why haven't you pushed? For more, I mean. We've been living together for almost 2 months. You could have made a move, tried to turn this into something else, but you haven't. Roman was quiet for a moment. Because you're not a conquest. You're a person who deserves the time and space to heal. And because whatever this becomes, I want you to choose it. Really choose it. Not because you feel grateful or obligated or like you owe me something. What if I never choose it? What if I can't? Then we stay friends. I don't regret any of this, Sophie, even if it never becomes more. You say that now. I'll say it a year from now, too. However long it takes. Sophie looked at him across the coffee table, this man who'd stepped into her worst moment and stayed through all the messy aftermath, who'd never asked for anything except the chance to help, who looked at her like she was worth waiting for. I'm scared, she admitted, of trusting this, of letting myself feel something that might just be gratitude disguised as something else. That's fair. Take your time figuring it out. What if I'm broken in ways I don't even know yet? What if Grant damaged me so badly that I can't— Sophie. Roman's voice was gentle but firm. You're not broken, you're healing. Those are different things. And whatever you discover about yourself in the process, we'll handle it. 3 months after the trial, Sophie finally went back to her own apartment. Not to move back in, the place still felt contaminated by Grant's memory, but to pack up her things and officially let it go. Rachel helped, along with Rachel's boyfriend Marcus, who had a truck and strong arms. They boxed up books and dishes, threw out things Grant had given her, created piles for donation and storage. You're really doing this, Rachel said, taping up a box of kitchen supplies. Starting over. Feels like the right time. And the new place Roman found you? You like it? Sophie had resisted at first when Roman suggested she look at apartments in a building he didn't own, somewhere that was entirely hers. But the one bedroom in Wicker Park had good light and hardwood floors and no memories of being afraid. She'd signed the lease last week. I love it. It feels like mine. And Roman? He feels like yours too? Sophie stopped packing, considered the question. I don't know yet, but I'm starting to think I want to find out. That night, back at the Lincoln Park apartment she'd been borrowing, Sophie found Roman in the kitchen making dinner. I signed the lease today, she said, for the new place. That's great. When do you move in? 2 weeks. Gives me time to get furniture, make it actually livable. Roman stirred something on the stove. I'll help however you need. I know you will. That's kind of the problem. He turned to face her. What do you mean? Sophie took a breath, tried to find words for something she barely understood herself. You've been taking care of me for months, making sure I'm safe, helping me get back on my feet, being exactly what I needed when I needed it, and I'm grateful. But I'm also terrified that I don't know the difference between needing you and wanting you. So take time to figure it out. I'm not going anywhere. But what if I never figure it out? What if I keep you waiting forever while I work through my damage? Then I wait forever. Sophie, I'm not here because I expect something from you. I'm here because being around you makes me remember why any of this matters. You make me want to be better. That's a lot of pressure. It's not pressure. It's just truth. Sophie moved closer. I need to tell you something, and I need you to not say anything until I'm done, okay? Roman nodded. When I met you, I was drowning. Grant had me so twisted around that I couldn't tell which way was up anymore. And you showed up and threw me a rope without asking for anything in return. You gave me space to breathe, to think, to remember who I was before him. And somewhere in all of that, I stopped just being grateful and started actually seeing you. Not Roman the rescuer, just Roman. The guy who can't keep plants alive and is afraid of heights and makes terrible jokes when he's nervous. Roman's mouth twitched, but he stayed quiet. I think I'm falling for you. Or maybe I already fell and I'm just now admitting it. But I'm also scared that I'm confusing gratitude with love, or that I'm not actually healed enough to make good decisions about who I let into my life. And I don't want to hurt you by starting something I'm not ready for. Can I talk now? Roman asked. Please. I'm scared too. I'm scared that I care about you so much it might actually wreck me if this doesn't work. I'm scared that I'll do something wrong and you'll realize I'm just another guy trying to control your life. I'm scared that you'll wake up one day and realize you can do better. He stepped closer. But I'm more scared of not trying, of letting fear make my decisions for me. So what do? We try, slowly, no pressure, no expectations. We see what this is when you're not running from Grant, and I'm not trying to save you, just two people figuring out if they fit. Sophie reached for his hand, felt his fingers close around hers. I want to try, but I need you to promise me something. Anything. If I start losing myself in this, if you see me becoming smaller or quieter or less than I am, you tell me. You don't let me disappear again. I promise. And you do the same for me. If I start treating you like someone who needs saving instead of someone who's already saved herself, you call me on it. Deal. They stood there in the kitchen, holding hands, while something fragile and new took shape between them. It wasn't the grand romantic gesture Sophie had imagined as a teenager. It was quieter, harder earned, real in a way that fairy tales never were. Roman leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. Sophie closed the distance herself, kissed him before fear could change her mind. It was soft, tentative, nothing like the demanding kisses Grant used to claim her with. This felt like a question she was finally ready to answer. When they pulled apart, Roman's eyes were dark with something that made Sophie's stomach flip in a good way. That was, he started. About time? Sophie finished. I was going to say perfect, but that works too. They ate dinner together, same as they had dozens of times before, but everything felt different now, charged with possibility instead of just gratitude and proximity. The next 6 months weren't easy. Sophie had nightmares about Grant showing up at her new apartment. She had moments where Roman touched her wrong and she flinched without meaning to. She had days where she couldn't tell if what she felt was love or just the absence of fear. But Roman was patient. He learned her triggers, her boundaries, the difference between when she needed space and when she needed him to stay. He showed up to her classroom volunteer days and met her students. He took her to dinner at places Grant had never been, helped her build new memories that had nothing to do with the past. And slowly, so slowly Sophie almost didn't notice it happening, she started to trust that this was real. 1 year after the night they met, Roman made reservations at the same restaurant where Grant had threatened her. Sophie almost said no. The place still made her stomach tight, but something made her agree. They arrived at 7, were seated at a different table than before, ordered wine and appetizers. Sophie kept waiting for the panic to hit, for the memory to overwhelm her. But all she felt was Roman across from her, solid and present, and the knowledge that she was choosing to be here. Why did you pick this place? She asked. Because the last time we were here, you were terrified and trapped. I wanted to give you a new memory, one where you're safe and choosing to stay. That's very therapeutic of you. My sister's been coaching me. Apparently I have a savior complex. Do you? Roman considered it. Maybe a little, but I'm working on it. Learning to see you as someone who saved herself, not someone I rescued. Good. Because I'm pretty sure I did most of the work. You absolutely did. Dinner was easy, comfortable. They talked about her students, his latest project, a trip to the coast they were planning for spring break. Normal couple things that still felt extraordinary because Sophie had forgotten what normal felt like. After dessert, Roman pulled a small box from his jacket pocket. Sophie's heart stopped. Roman, it's not what you think. Open it. Inside was a key, simple, silver, ordinary. It's to my place, Roman said. The real one, not the apartment you've been staying in. I want you to have access to all of me, not just the parts I think are presentable. And if you want to use it, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But I want you to know you're welcome in every part of my life. Sophie turned the key over in her fingers. I have something for you too. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her purse, slid it across the table. Roman unfolded it, scanned the contents, looked up with questions in his eyes. It's a deed, Sophie said. To the foundation I'm starting. For women leaving abusive relationships. I want to help them the way you helped me. Give them safe places to stay, legal support, therapy. Everything I needed and couldn't afford. Sophie, this is incredible. But this says my name as co-founder. Because I want to do this with you, not as your charity project or because I feel obligated, but because I think we're good together, better than we are apart, and I want to build something that matters with someone who matters to me. Roman's hand covered hers across the table. Are you sure? This is a big commitment. I'm sure. About the foundation, about you, about all of it. I spent 2 years being afraid to commit to anything because Grant taught me commitment meant losing myself. But this doesn't feel like losing myself. It feels like finding something bigger than me. I love you, Roman said, and the words didn't feel heavy or demanding. They felt like relief. I love you too. Took me a while to figure that out, but I do. They left the restaurant hand in hand, walked to the park where they'd gone that first week. The same bench, the same pond, everything familiar but transformed by context. Can I tell you something? Sophie said. Always. Sometimes I think about that woman, Maria, the one Grant attacked thinking she was me. I found out her name, looked her up. She's a nurse, has 2 kids, completely innocent person who got hurt because she looked like someone else. You've been carrying that. Yeah, I keep thinking I should reach out, apologize, something, but what do I say? Sorry my ex-boyfriend mistook you for me and ruined your life? Her life isn't ruined, she's working again, her kids are fine, and it wasn't your fault. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, I can't shake the feeling that I owe her something. Roman was quiet for a moment. So pay it forward. Use the foundation to help other women. Make sure Maria's story and yours and everyone else's actually means something. Turn the damage into something that helps. Sophie leaned her head on his shoulder. When did you get so wise? Somewhere around the time I fell in love with a second-grade teacher who's tougher than she thinks. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights reflect on the water. Sophie thought about the woman she'd been a year ago, terrified, trapped, convinced she'd never be free. And then she thought about who she was now, scarred but standing, scared but trying, broken but healing. The foundation launched 6 months later. They called it Second Chances because Sophie liked the idea that everyone deserved another shot at getting it right. Roman provided the funding, Sophie provided the vision, and together they built something that mattered. The first woman they helped was named Jessica, 23, escaping a boyfriend who'd isolated her from everyone she knew. She stayed in the safe apartment for 3 months, got therapy, found a job, slowly rebuilt her life. When she moved into her own place, she hugged Sophie and said, "Thank you for showing me it's possible." That became the mission statement, showing people it was possible. 2 years after the night they met, Roman proposed for real, not in a fancy restaurant or on a beach or in any of the places people expected. He proposed in Sophie's classroom after school on a random Tuesday, surrounded by alphabet posters and student artwork. "This is where you're most yourself," he said, down on one knee while Sophie stared at him in shock. "Where you're strong and confident and exactly who you're meant to be. And I want to spend the rest of my life watching you be that person." Sophie said yes through tears, laughed when her students burst in the next morning, and screamed about Miss Caldwell getting married. She said yes to building a life with someone who saw her clearly and loved her anyway. Said yes to taking a risk on something that felt real instead of safe. The wedding was small, just family and close friends, held in the park where they'd walked that first terrible week. Sophie wore a dress she picked out herself, no input from anyone else. Rachel stood beside her as maid of honor. Roman's sister Catherine gave a toast about second chances and new beginnings that made everyone cry. Grant had been released on parole 6 months earlier, having served 2 years of his 4-year sentence. Sophie had been terrified when she got the notification, certain he'd come after her immediately. But he never did. Jennifer heard through legal channels that he'd moved to California, was in mandatory therapy, had apparently found some semblance of humility in prison. Sophie didn't know if she believed that, didn't particularly care. Grant Mercer was a chapter in her story, not the whole book, and she was done letting him have power over her narrative. At the reception, Sophie's mother approached hesitantly. They'd barely spoken since the trial, their relationship strained by her mother's initial defense of Grant. "You look beautiful," her mother said. "Happy." "I am happy. I owe you an apology for not believing you earlier, for making excuses for him. I should have protected you instead of questioning you." Sophie could have held on to the anger, could have made her mother work for forgiveness, but she was tired of carrying resentment. "I forgive you," she said simply, "not because you deserve it, but because I deserve to let it go." Her mother's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how you got so strong." "I had to. Nobody else was going to do it for me." They hugged, awkward and imperfect, and Sophie felt another weight lift. Forgiveness wasn't about absolving people. It was about refusing to let their mistakes continue damaging you. Roman found her later, pulled her onto the dance floor for their first dance as husband and wife. They swayed to music Sophie had chosen herself, surrounded by people who loved them, and Sophie felt something she hadn't felt in years. Safe. Not because someone was protecting her, but because she'd learned to protect herself. Not because the danger was gone, but because she'd proven she could survive it. "What are you thinking?" Roman murmured against her hair. "That I'm glad I didn't let fear win. That I'm glad I took a chance on this." "Me too. And I'm thinking about all the women we're going to help. All the Sophies out there who think they're stuck, who don't know there's another option. We'll show them, together." The foundation grew. Within 3 years, they'd helped over 100 women leave dangerous situations, start new lives, remember who they were before someone tried to make them smaller. Sophie told her story at fundraisers, spoke at colleges about recognizing abuse, trained counselors on trauma-informed care. And every time she stood up to speak, she thought about that night in the restaurant, the moment Roman had stepped in and given her a choice, the moment she'd chosen herself. Because that was the real story. Not that Roman had saved her, but that he'd given her the space and resources to save herself. And that distinction mattered. It was the difference between rescue and partnership, between dependence and choice. 5 years after they met, Sophie sat in her classroom after school grading papers when her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, old habits dying hard. But she did, and heard a voice she hadn't expected. "Sophie? It's Maria. Maria Santos. I don't know if you remember me." Sophie's heart stopped. "Of course I remember you. How did you get my number?" "Through the foundation. I've been following the work you're doing. It's incredible." "Maria, I've wanted to reach out so many times to apologize for what happened to you. I'm so sorry." "Don't. Please don't apologize. What happened wasn't your fault. It was his." Maria's voice was firm. "I called because I want to help. With the foundation. I'm a nurse. I work with trauma patients. I thought maybe I could volunteer, help the women you work with understand they're not alone." Sophie felt tears burning behind her eyes. "You do that? After everything?" "Because of everything. He hurt us both. But we're still here, and maybe we can use that to help other people who are still in it." They met for coffee the following week. Maria was smaller than Sophie remembered, but there was steel in her spine that hadn't been there before. They talked for hours, comparing stories, finding common ground and shared trauma. "Do you ever think about him?" Maria asked. "Wonder if he's changed." "Sometimes. But then I remember that whether he changed or not isn't my problem. My job is to keep moving forward." That's healthier than my approach. I still check the news, make sure he hasn't hurt anyone else. "And has he?" "Not that I can find. But I'm not sure I'd trust that he's actually different. People like him, they just get better at hiding it." Sophie thought about that. About Grant in his California life, maybe in therapy, maybe genuinely trying to change, or maybe just waiting for his next victim, someone who didn't know his history. "I hope he changed," Sophie said finally, "not for his sake, but for the sake of whoever he meets next." But hoping isn't the same as trusting. Maria became a regular volunteer at the foundation. She brought a perspective Sophie didn't have, the randomness of violence, the way trauma affects people who weren't even the intended target. Together, they expanded the program to help not just women leaving relationships, but anyone impacted by domestic violence. Children, family members, even the innocent bystanders who got caught in the crossfire. On their 10th anniversary, Roman surprised Sophie with a trip back to that restaurant. Same table where Grant had threatened her, same view of the street where everything had changed. "Why do we keep coming back here?" Sophie asked, though she already knew the answer. "Because it's where you became who you are. Not where you were saved, but where you chose to save yourself." "I chose to accept help. That's different than saving myself." "Is it? You could have stayed with Grant, could have believed his version of events, let him convince you that you were the problem. But you didn't. You walked out of this restaurant with a stranger because some part of you knew you deserved better. That's you saving yourself." Sophie looked around the restaurant, thought about all the versions of herself who'd sat in this space. The terrified woman who'd agreed to meet Grant here, the woman who'd left with Roman, the woman who'd come back again and again to prove she wasn't afraid anymore. "I've been thinking about something," she said, "about writing a book, about everything that happened, what I learned, how I got through it." You should. It would mean going public with details I've kept private, talking about things I've tried to forget. It would also mean helping people who are going through the same thing, showing them there's a way out. Sophie twirled her wine glass. Would you be okay with it, having our story out there? It's your story, Sophie. You get to decide what to do with it. She wrote the book over the next year, titled it The Woman Who Chose Herself, because that's what it was really about. Not abuse or escape or even recovery. It was about the moment someone decides they're worth saving, worth fighting for, worth choosing. The book came out on the anniversary of Grant's conviction. Sophie did interviews, spoke at book signings, answered the same questions over and over. How did you know when to leave? How did you find the strength? Aren't you afraid he'll come after you again? And every time she gave the same answer. She didn't know when to leave until she left. She found strength by using it, not by waiting for it to magically appear. And yes, sometimes she was still afraid, but fear wasn't a reason to stop living. Grant's father tried to sue to stop publication, claimed the book was defamatory, that Sophie was profiting from lies. The lawsuit went nowhere. Everything in the book was documented truth, backed by police reports and court testimony. But the attempt told Sophie everything she needed to know about whether the Mercer family had learned anything. The book became a bestseller, not because the writing was perfect or because the story was unique, but because it was real. Sophie didn't sugarcoat the ugly parts, didn't pretend healing was linear or that love fixed everything. She wrote about the nightmares that still woke her up sometimes, the moments she still flinched when Roman moved too fast, the guilt she carried about Maria. She wrote about the hard truth that leaving was just the beginning, that the real work came after, in learning to trust yourself again, to believe you deserved good things, to accept help without feeling weak. And people responded. The Foundation's hotline was flooded with calls, women who'd been making excuses for partners who hurt them, women who thought they were the only ones going through this, women who just needed to hear that someone else had survived it and built something beautiful on the other side. 15 years after that night in the restaurant, Sophie stood in front of a room full of donors at the Foundation's annual gala. Roman sat in the front row, same as he did every year, pride written across his face. When I started Second Chances, Sophie said, I thought I was helping other women. I thought I was giving back, paying forward the help I received. But what I've learned is that they were helping me just as much. Every woman who walks through our doors and chooses herself reminds me why that choice matters. Reminds me that we're not broken things that need fixing. We're strong things that sometimes need support. She looked at Roman, at Maria in the third row, at the faces of women she'd helped over the years. Some of them had gone on to start their own nonprofits, write their own books, build their own beautiful lives. Some were still struggling, still finding their way. All of them were choosing themselves day after day. The Foundation has helped over 1,000 women in the past 15 years. But the number that matters most to me is 1, because if we can help one woman realize she deserves better, that she's worth fighting for, that there's life after abuse, then we've done something that matters. We've shown her it's possible. The room erupted in applause. Sophie stepped down from the podium, let Roman pull her into his arms. You're incredible, he whispered. We're incredible. This doesn't work without both of us. Still, you're the one with the courage to stand up there and tell your story over and over. That's not easy. Nothing worthwhile is. They danced later, surrounded by people who believed in the work they were doing. Sophie thought about the girl she'd been at 26, so convinced that leaving Grant would be the hardest thing she ever did. She'd been right about that. But it had also been the best thing, because leaving had led her here, to a life she'd built on her own terms, to a marriage that felt like partnership instead of ownership, to work that mattered, that helped people, that turned her pain into purpose. Grant had tried to make her small, had spent 3 years convincing her that she was nothing without him, that she should be grateful anyone wanted her at all. And for a while she'd believed him, but she didn't anymore. She knew her worth now, knew it in her bones in the way she walked through the world, in the way she loved Roman without losing herself, knew it in every woman she helped remember her own strength. The story could have ended differently. Grant could have won. Sophie could have stayed, let fear make her decisions, spent her life being smaller than she was meant to be. Or she could have left and never recovered, let the trauma define her forever. But she'd chosen a different path, the harder one, The one that required believing she was worth saving even when she didn't feel like it. The one that meant accepting help without shame. Building something new without forgetting what came before. Loving again without pretending the past didn't happen. That night, as they drove home through Chicago streets that no longer felt dangerous, Roman asked the question he always asked after big events. "What are you thinking about?" Sophie considered her answer. "I'm thinking about how grateful I am that I answered my phone that day you called. How glad I am that I trusted you enough to get in your car. How lucky I feel that I got to build this life instead of the one Grant wanted for me. I'm the lucky one. We're both lucky. And we both worked hard to get here. Those things can both be true." They pulled up to their house, the one they'd bought together 5 years ago, filled with furniture they'd chosen and memories they'd made. Sophie looked at it and felt nothing but peace. She'd survived. More than that, she'd thrived. Built a life worth living, helped others do the same, proved that trauma didn't have to be the end of the story. It could be the beginning of something better. As she unlocked the front door and stepped into the warmth of home, Sophie thought about all the women out there still trapped in their own versions of Grant, still believing they were nothing, that they deserved the abuse, that leaving was impossible. She thought about Maria, about Rachel, about Roman, about everyone who'd held her up when she couldn't stand on her own, about the fact that asking for help wasn't weakness, it was the bravest thing she'd ever done. And she thought about that moment in the restaurant 15 years ago, the moment a stranger had stood up and given her a choice, the moment she'd chosen herself. That choice had led her here, to safety, to love, to purpose, to a life where she didn't spend every moment waiting for something terrible to happen, where she could laugh without calculating the cost, where she could love without losing herself. Grant Mercer had tried to destroy her, but he'd failed. And every day she woke up and chose to keep living, keep helping, keep building something beautiful. That was her revenge. Not hurting him back, but refusing to let him have any more power over her story. She was Sophie Devereaux now, teacher, activist, author, wife, woman who'd survived and helped others do the same, woman who'd learned that strength wasn't about never being afraid, it was about being afraid and doing it anyway. And as she curled up beside Roman that night, safe and chosen and whole, Sophie finally understood what she'd been searching for all along. Not rescue, not salvation, just the simple, profound truth that she was enough, had always been enough, would always be enough. Grant couldn't take that from her. Nobody could. She'd chosen herself. And that made all the difference.